Good evening and welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board for September 4th, 2024. My name is Dawn Philibert and I'm chair of the board and other board members. John Muscatelli, Charlie Johnston, Quinn Mann, myself, and staff Marla Keene and Marty Gillis. Thank you for being here, either in the audience or online or by phone. This meeting is being recorded. There's a couple of ways to participate. As I said, you can attend, as you folks have. You can attend online or you can attend via phone. But in any event, it's important to register your participation should you wish to make any action down the road. So if you're here, please sign up and provide your contact information back on the sign-up sheet. If you're online or attending virtually, please put your contact information in the chat box. And if you're on the phone, please email your contact information to mkeene@southburlingtonvt.gov. Okay, let's start with the agenda. It's going to be a long night. I will be holding people to time limits, but the first item of business is to explain the emergency evacuation procedures. There are doors in the two back corners of the auditorium. In the event of an emergency, you would simply exit those doors and go left or right to be outside. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items? Hearing none, are there any announcements? Nope. Okay. Any comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda? Okay. Let's move ahead with our first project. Master Plan Sketch Plan Application SD 2416 of City of Burlington, Patrick Leahy, Burlington International Airport, to establish a master plan for an approximately 901.6 acre existing airport complex. The master plan includes 6 phases over 21.8 acres and consists of a 28,000 square foot north terminal expansion, a 4.0 acre multi-use path, an 8.3 acre maintenance complex with 41,500 square feet with a 41,500 square foot building, a 3.4 acre apron expansion, a 2.3 acre project involving hangar and apron expansion, and a 25,000 square foot south terminal expansion at 1200 Airport Drive. Who's here for the applicant, please?
Excuse me, Larry Lackey, Director of Planning, Engineering, and Sustainability.
My name is Nick Longo. I am the Director of the airport.
Hi.
Jackie DeJess with EIV Technical Services, assisting with the permit applications.
Anyone else?
Stu Moncrief with Jacobs Engineering Group.
Sue?
Stu.
STU.
Stu, sorry. Okay, like beef.
Right.
Okay,
My name is Dave Carmen, Deputy Director of Aviation.
okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, this is a sketch plan for master plan, so we don't need to swear them in, right? Even though it's a master plan. Okay, I'm having trouble finding my notes on my iPad, so I'm going to let you provide a few brief introductory comments while I do this, because I have my
Sure.
notes in writing.
Sure. Is it Marty or Marla? Who has control up there? Okay. Can you switch to page 18, please, to start? Page 18 of this submittal.
And while you do that, I just want to say thank you very much for the board and specifically to the staff of the city. There's a lot going on, obviously, with the airport, and there's a lot of exciting opportunities for us. So thank you for your review and your time on this. Larry's going to really walk us through the various elements and the phasing of this particular master plan, and then walk us into the sketch part of one of those phases. So thank you very much. I'm here, of course, to help answer, and we couldn't be more excited to start these projects very quickly.
All right. The first project, we're here for sketch plan review for the next project, the North Concourse Replacement Project, and the overall master plan. So if you look at the screen in front of you, the orange building is the existing terminal at the airport, okay? The blue is Project Next, okay? It consists of 28,000 square feet area with 3 floors. First floor being electrical and mechanical storage at the apron level. Second floor is the
Excuse me, what does apron level mean?
it's where the airplanes park. The
Okay.
okay,
It's the ground
the
level.
ground level,
Thank you.
ground level. Okay, and so the concourse level is level 2, 28,000 square feet, and then we're proposing a third floor, which is approximately 8,000 square feet for administrative office and an amenity that's kind of gone away from the airport because behind TSA checkpoint we have the old tower that parents used to bring their children to the airport and take it up there, but they can't anymore because it's beyond TSA. So we're bringing that back into the airport with access before you have to go through TSA for people to see up there. So 3 floors. If you wouldn't mind going to number 20.
I remember bringing my children there with their play group and how much the kids enjoyed it.
We want to bring it back, and there'll be an outdoor feature as well, so you can actually go outside
Nice.
on the roof.
That's not the right one, 20. Hold on. Maybe we got them numbered differently. I just took it from the way it was presented. I'm looking for the one that shows the current North Concourse. It's after go.
I think it's 20.
Hang on, we'll get there. We just had to open we had to open a different PDF.
Okay, yeah. Is that? I had 20, so I don't know if that was
Yep,
right.
you're
or wrong.
fine.
Yeah. Okay. So if you can see to the top of the screen that appendage that sticks out, that's the current North Concourse. So this project is a safety and customer experience improvement project. So from a safety perspective, airplanes are lined up there and they're getting larger, right? More passengers, and they're going away from the smaller regional jets. So airplanes are big, and they actually intrude on our vehicle service road and stuff like that. So the FAA has issues with that, and they want us to do something about that. Locally, that the appendage, the North Concourse that sticks out, these planes have now, rather than 50 on each plane, they're between 100 and 150 people, and there could be 2 to 4 in there at a time. And as you can see, that's a very small area for that many people. So we're doing away with that North Concourse. Also make Chief Francis very happy too. So he's glad to see this happen. And as you saw on the page 18, if you can go back there,
I'm sorry, why will that make the chief of police happy?
because you've got a hallway where you've got planes that people like to sit next to where their gate is.
Right.
I mean, you've got 15 seats or 20 seats for each gate. There's 150 people getting on a plane. Okay. Chief Francis doesn't like that many people in that small area.
You said fire chief, don't?
Fire chief, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay,
Oh,
got
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So
Thanks.
yeah. So
That original terminal was designed in an era that really had 20 to 30 seats on a particular aircraft. So when that was designed about 25 years ago and built just over 20 years ago, it was never the intention to bring passengers all the way down that hallway to the gate. That's why there used to be a glass wall, and then you
I
check
see.
in and then walk down. We don't do that anymore, so we really are required to take that down.
Yep.
So, that's the area there'll be enough room for the number of passengers getting on the planes at the same time that number of people coming off the planes. So keep that in mind too. We've got people that want to get on, the same number that want to get off. So it's really takes care of that safety issue, both from the FAA standpoint on the outside, but also from the passenger's experience. The highlights of this building, the 28,000 square foot building, is heating and cooling by geothermal. We anticipate 40 to 50 wells. We're utilizing mass timber. We've done the analysis from a carbon standpoint, and it's beneficial to use mass timber, and we're moving forward with, there'll be some steel, but mass timber. And also there'll be solar on the rooftop. So that's a brief overview of what this 28,000 foot, as far as from what you can see or can't see, this project will be not noticeable from any public road. The only place you'll be able to see it is on Airfield or on Airport Drive. It's not noticeable anywhere else unless you're absolutely trying to look for it. So it's very,
So where I go to get on a plane,
yep,
that building is going to be torn down?
no,
No,
just go back to, I'm sorry.
just the ramp.
That little small hallway,
Okay,
that concourse that goes out.
okay, got
See,
it.
yeah, see,
Thank
he's
you.
pointing to it right now, right? That goes out there, and it gets replaced with the blue.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
so that's I don't know, 5 times the area.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay. So that's kind of our overview of the project. Next, I don't know if you have any questions. I can go on. I will go on to the rest of the master plan projects, unless you have any questions on that specific one.
I don't. Anyone else? No?
Okay. All right. The next one is the rec path, which is page 17, I believe. All right. I don't know. Marla will remember. I'm not sure, Don, if you'll remember, but 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago now, we came forward with an idea where we have projects on the airfield where they're vertical construction, where we can't meet the landscaping need, which we can with this project a little bit on site with the upper deck and out in front a little bit, but there's going to be more money to be spent that we want to put somewhere else. And our idea was 5 or 6 years ago to come forward with a master plan, or a rec path where we could use that money to benefit the local community. So this diagram depicts approximately where that will go. We are currently under design, and we'll be moving forward that application really soon.
So
and-
Larry, in this picture, north is to the right.
Right, yeah,
So to the left of the page is Williston Road.
Wilson Road, yeah.
So you also came to us for a project involving the signage at the beginning of the airport, the entrance.
Right. Well,
Where-
it's
where-
really what happened. That was part of, there has been a couple of those that we've benefited from this project. One, as you come off, if you turn off from Williston Road onto Airport Drive, right on the right there, years ago, it didn't look so great. So we came in with a Vermont granite and made it look a lot nicer. It's not the actual entrance to the airport, so we can't really have a sign, but we've talked about having some form of a monument or something like that, but we haven't got to that. We also took advantage of this master plan, and we put in new iron fence along the cemetery to make it look nicer. So we've done those couple of things where we've taken those monies where we couldn't spend on the vertical construction because of the airfield, we can't have plants or trees, and put that money there.
Thank you.
So I have no more than this. The plan is we will be coming in first with the next project and this project, and we'll get into that with the questions Marla came up with.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on that part?
One quick thing I'll add to this is we've done a lot of public communication on this particular plan. We've had public hearings. We've presented this at the Chamberlain Elementary School to many of the residents of this neighborhood and received quite a bit of feedback, including adding community gardens to some of the spaces and of course, what Larry talked about, which is that multi-use path.
Would you mind going, Marty, go back to 20? The site plan that shows all.
So do you want to keep going through the?
Yeah, I'm going to go through the
Okay.
master plan, because really, we have 2 things tonight. We have sketch plan for the next project, and then sketch plan for the overall master plan. That's what we're presenting.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through the projects in order of which we would move them forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let me see. Where was I? Okay. No, back to, well, I got different numbers. It's the site plan that shows all the different locations, Marty.
18, yeah.
18, yeah. Did I have that right on this? Okay, if you could blow that, no, that's not the one either.
15.
15, yeah. 15, sorry. All right. Bear with me 1 second here. Okay, so the next project is up in the upper left-hand corner, the proposed SRE building, okay? We have multiple pieces of equipment, large equipment, tractor trailer size, plows, blowers, sweepers, all connected in one unit, 5 or 6 of them, okay? Along with plows, other plows, blowers, sanding equipment, where the FAA requires you to keep it inside, okay? We don't have the space right now to do that. So we are getting funding to build that SRE building, snow removal equipment storage building. All right, and our proposal is to do it on the north area in that circle up to the north. And part of our response was we were asked to come up with a diagram of that. So we'll present that during when we go through the staff comments. We have a diagram to share. And we did submit those yesterday or the day before. So this will consist of about a 41,000 square foot building. And it's, I think, about 8 acres of paved area that will also have a fuel island and also have storage for de-icing materials for, sodium formate, not really, for de-icing the runways and taxiways and stuff like that, and plus stormwater control improvements. So when we get to the staff comments, we have a diagram of that. So I won't go any further than that unless you have any questions on that one. So that's the next one. Hold on, I got messed up here. Oh, here we go. Okay, that was on. All right. So the next one is the cargo apron project. If you can point to that, Marty, that would be great. Okay, as I think if you've driven by the airport, you see the FedEx plane parked there, that large aircraft, right? Well, there's another large company that brings in cargo, and it's on multiple planes every day. There's interest by another air cargo company to come in with a bigger plane rather than a bunch of small planes. We're going through the process of reviewing and designing that now, where we're just going to expand the existing apron a little bit with future plans to improve the building at that location. So really, we're going to expand the apron footprint, 7,400 square yards, just a paved area. We'll also have to reroute the vehicle service road a little bit between that and taxiway Kilo. So basically, it's just a place for another cargo plane to park, large one, next to the FedEx plane that you all see sitting there. Any questions on that? The next project is the Pratt & Whitney hangar expansion. Pratt & Whitney is doing very well up there. They have expanded their clientele. They have a lot of business, and they need more room to work on jet engines. They just went out for an RFQ for architect engineer to come up with a design, and I will refer back to the staff comments we got, and Jackie will get into that with another diagram that we propose. But where that location is, if you can point to that, Marty, that would be great. Right there. Yeah. So that's right next to our current maintenance SRE storage building, which is undersized, and right where that big FedEx plane parks. Oh, whoops! I'm sorry. I'm talking about the hangar, the Pratt & Whitney one. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's over by the new Beta hangar. Sorry. Yeah. Any questions on that one? All right, and then the South Concourse project. This project is out probably 6 or 7 years. This is a mirror image of, if you want to point there, Marty, you see the appendage coming off, the South Concourse that sticks off right there, just like the one on the north does. Okay, again, we have a similar issues with that, right? With capacity, size of plane, all that. We want to do the same thing on the south, which will extend the terminal to the south. and get rid of that current concourse, which again only seats so many people, and we're seeing much larger planes, less flights, bigger planes, and more seats.
And that's the brand new building?
So the brand new building is a transition. Okay, so the first transition was to consolidate the TSA in one location. If you walk up through TSA, you come up and you see that open space there, kind of looks like wasted space. That's not wasted space. If you're coming up the stairway to go up there, if you look straight out at the Beta hangar, okay, we will extend that way, and that part on the air side of the building will become seating and jet bridges right there in the long term. Okay. Also, although it's not part of the project, also back to the next project is we're clearing off the entire second floor where all the administrative offices are and all the old conference rooms and that type of stuff. So it's an experience where you come through the airport, you can look at the Green Mountain Range, the whole walk from where you're talking about all the way to the north. So that's another interior project that's part of this overall next project. So you have a very linear terminal rather than all the stuff we got going on. So that's the big plan. That's, Nick and I have been working on this for a few years, and, we're figuring out how to get it done. So then the last one is the hotel. I think you've read about that. So we are going to be going back out for an RFP or RFQ to find a new partner to do that. I think before we were proposing about a 104 room hotel. The location doesn't change. It might be the same partner. We don't know. Of course, with COVID, that hurt it. And then with the interest rates that came in, that hurt the partner we were working with. So we had to stop negotiation. It lasted 7 years. So we're going to go back out. And so that's my overview of all the projects.
Great.
Of the projects. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you. So as you know, we are now going to go through the staff report, focusing on the highlighted comments.
And Jackie will take care of that.
Okay, so the first, number one, I didn't quite understand. Let me read it. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe the remaining components of this phase that result in a less than 1 acre building consisting of an 8.3 acre project. So is the point that the project is 8.3 acres, but the building is less than 1 acre?
Yep, so the applicant's description just described the building, and so the question here is what other than the building makes it 8.3 acres?
That's a great question, Marla. Thank you.
You can ask them. We did provide comments, and we have copies if you need them to the staff comments. If you want copies, I don't know if you can do that, Marla, but unless you've already handed them out.
I haven't. If you'd like to, you're welcome to.
We brought copies just in case anybody
Thank
wanted to make notes.
Marty, I did put it in supplemental, but it's kind of the last minute. Were there plans in that supplemental you sent me as well? Or it was just,
There's a few figures just to add
but
a
they're
little bit
in
more
the,
context.
okay,
Yeah, they're in this handout,
Got it.
and it shows the first one that we talk about in the staff comments with the SLE building.
okay. So you probably do want to pull it up so that people at home can look at it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We want to pull it up, Marty, but we're going to be responding to the first staff comment, which references the same. So as Marty's pulling that up, so in response to this comment, in addition to the snow removal and equipment building itself, there's a fueling farm, shed for de-icing, large vehicles, and emergency service vehicles, which require a large
Can you
turning
pull
radius.
that closer to you, please, so that
Sure.
you're not skipping out? Okay, thanks.
Yep, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, thanks.
So it includes a fueling farm, a shed for de-icing, large vehicles, and emergency services. We'll need a large turning radius. We did consult with Chief Terry Francis regarding this current layout, so we needed to expand to make sure we could include those turning radius. We also need access to the taxiway from the snow removal and equipment building. And there's an area within the existing enterprise parking lot that will be repaved and line striped. So there will be approximately 8.3 acres that will be involved in terms of earth disturbance, staging, access during construction. Once the project is complete, it'll be approximately 4.2 acres of involved impervious area, which includes both redeveloped and new impervious surface.
Good questions? Okay, number 2. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to clarify the project area. Staff further recommends the board ask the applicant to clarify in layperson terms what the purpose of a cargo apron expansion is.
Sounds great. So Larry, I think, did a great job explaining this with the introduction. We have a large cargo carrier similar to FedEx that would be using this area. The earth disturbance and staging areas associated with the cargo apron project is 3.4 acres. As Larry had mentioned, the service road will need to be adjusted in terms of location. We have to maintain that during construction. This also includes earth disturbance and staging areas. There's about a 7,400 square yard expansion, which I believe is about 1.53 acres for the redeveloped and new impervious, which would be the final conditions. The cargo and apron expansion project would enable this new potential carrier to utilize this space and would be able to further reduce the flights per day by using larger aircraft. We've included a figure just after the snow removal and equipment building that is very similar to what's included on our initial submission, but adds a little bit more detail and is enlarged. Were there any further questions regarding the project area?
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. The next question is kind of a back of the envelope or napkin sketch of the phase similar to that which was provided for the above apron expansion. Pardon me. I kind of feel like you've done that already. Does anyone have any questions about that? Do you need more information?
If it's helpful, Dawn, we did include a napkin sketch on Google Earth imagery as the last exhibit shown in this submission. And as Larry had mentioned, this is a very recent project that just went out to RFP. So the architect and engineer are coming up with the design. This conveys the approach of how they would like to relocate parking and expand the hangar in general.
This is Pratt and Whitney.
Pratt and Whitney expansion. Yeah.
Okay. Questions, board?
Just for my own curiosity, this is like additional private jet capacity?
No.
Well, just to clarify, this is our building. This is owned by the city of Burlington, so this is not owned by Pratt & Whitney or anything like that. This is, in general, additional hangar space. So, yes, this would support any type of aircraft and, of course, enlarge that particular hangar. What Larry was getting at is Pratt & Whitney. They now have larger engines, larger materials, so their need is much greater, and they cannot support their need in the existing facility.
They have large contracts with large charter companies to rejuvenate their engines. So
This is the largest Pratt & Whitney engine repair station on the East Coast. So they're growing, which is great.
Okay, moving on to number 4.
So
So
this is, if I could jump in, this
Yeah.
is sort of a new thing under the draft LDRs, which you are getting a presentation on next meeting. Up until now, in all of your board experience, sketch plan has been completely non-binding. Is intended to remain non-binding, except the draft amendment requires that the DRB make a determination, which is a appealable decision, on whether master plan is required. So what I've attempted to do here is include a motion that the board can make now as a standalone motion. It's not a written decision on the whole thing. It's just a decision on whether master plan is required. So we've written a suggested motion here. And if you'd like to do that, that now would be the time.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that the three-phase project presented. Oh, no. I move that the three-phase project presented in the sketch plan application SD 2416 be subject to master plan review.
And I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? No? Okay, good. Thank you. Number 5, that project will require site amenity and landscaping. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe how they will meet those requirements and if they will be addressed with a proposed recreation path. Direct the applicant to submit the recreation path application concurrently with the concourse replacement application.
We do intend to utilize the recreation path to meet the landscape requirement. We can submit the rec path application and have it constructed and completed with the CO prior to the north or next project CO. We are working on it currently. It may be submitted as a site plan application just after the North Concourse project, but we recognize that we would not have a CO for the North Concourse project without satisfying the landscaping requirements and are proposing that timeline.
Okay. What is the board's feedback on that? Does that sound okay?
I don't know if we can get to this level of detail or as far as what other like timelines that staff is held to, but it sounds like if the first one, the non-rec path comes in first and it's shortly behind, timelines kind of get, it could happen. So maybe that first application doesn't come to us until the rec path is in. Is that
the next
something?
project would come first?
Yes, next. And then,
Shortly followed by the rec path in a little bit of time. So that's our goal.
So I have a little bit of a concern with issuing a zoning permit to construct without the rec path being approved.
okay.
But I don't see any problem with approving one and then conditioning the zoning permit on the other.
I see.
I'm a little concerned with conditioning the CO on the other, because that would mean they could potentially get well underway, and then the board would be backed into a corner on approving the rec path.
What happens if you construct the North Concourse and you can't construct the path in the same year, right? And then you have half your terminals not usable, or
Right.
I think that's what we're getting back. We don't want you coming back and saying, "Hey, this is a bill. We want to get people in planes," right? And we've conditioned the path to also be built, but we had a flood, for example.
Yeah, great question. None of us want that, right? We want both projects. We need this public amenity for our terminal and our passengers, and we want to support the neighborhood and be a good neighbor to the neighborhood. Our goal is, and our urgency is, to make sure that we're able to build this new concourse. This is a safety risk. This is a safety issue for a public need. We want to work and are working with the city of South Burlington. There's significant collaboration on making sure that this rec path is built. We're not proposing that we're going to be coming in late, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but there's time conditions on a proposal back to the board. Nor could we build this recreational path this year or even this winter. Of course, it's going to have to happen next year, next summer. But if we wait for both of these applicants to go in first and wait to get a full permit to build this building, we're not going to be able to build the building in the time frame that we really need it to be built.
The building is almost a 2-year project, where the rec path we can get done next year. That project's going to go into a whole nother year. So there shouldn't be any issue with that. So
I think if I'm reading between the lines a little bit, if I'm permitted to say this out loud, there's a concern that the rec path will be delayed by the collaborative process with the city and with neighbors. And so the concern is that would prevent beginning construction on the terminal.
That's correct. Yeah, and my concern isn't massively. It's not a large concern over the collaboration, right? But there needs to be some additional feedback by the public and by the neighbors on this particular project, and we want that to happen. This is very close to some of these neighbors and houses.
And we've had a public hearing with the neighbors, and they're very positive about this project.
Oh yeah. But the concern is if we don't start this terminal project this year or this cycle, we're going to be in a serious issue with the public safety and the particular concourse. Meaning, if we don't build it, we're probably not going to have a terminal to operate from anyways because we can't operate in our existing facility.
And you need the bike path, it's not bike path, the shared use path for the landscaping requirement for that phase. You can't push the path to another phase and you can do landscaping on site. No, okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's move on to number 6. Staff considers the terminal project to have the most need for integration into the surrounding neighborhood. The rec path and supporting features conceptually approved in MS 2001 may serve as a transition between the airport and the surround uses. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to discuss how this feature may or may not factor into their FAA approved plans for mitigating incompatible uses.
Sure. So we've got a draft response, but Marla, please let me know if you have any further questions or clarifications. Just to confirm, we cannot install landscaping items inside of the security fence adjacent to the north concourse per FAA requirements. We are including plantings on the roof deck, which will be available to the public, and then remaining items will be installed on airport property to meet the full landscape requirement through the rec path. The rec path is proposed to begin at the intersection of Airport Road and Airport Drive and extend toward Dumont Avenue.
Questions?
Is this related to noise mitigation? Was that the question?
No, so the standard in the LDR is to include integration, to have the master plan include standards, but standards I think in like a lowercase s way, for functional and aesthetic integration of the development with the surrounding neighborhood. So that could take a lot of different forms. If you were developing in an old downtown, the functional and aesthetic integration may be building brick buildings. If you are developing an incompatible use next to a residential, the functional aesthetic integration may be a nice wide vegetated brick path, for instance. So what we were trying to get at with this comment is how are you going to, what about your project creates this integration with the surrounding neighborhood? And it may be simply that you're building a rec path, but are there any other elements?
It is somewhat related to our noise compatibility program. I think they are related. We have the opportunity in that previous land for landscape and other public amenities. We have beautiful land right now, but I think there can be a more welcoming atmosphere to actually use that land a little bit more frequently with this process. That land is classified as a noise buffer zone per FAA regulations. It has to remain a noise buffer zone. And of course, with the requirements of any of our vertical landscape requirements on any of these vertical buildings, it only made sense to combine these efforts, making sure that there's a public amenity for keeping this noise buffer zone, integrating it into the compatible adjacent land uses, and tying it to our vertical landscaping construction requirements. That really is the connection with our FAA requirements in that space.
This path also connects two parts of already existing paths and walkways to South Burlington. So it's a connection.
Okay. Questions? All right, number 7 involves infrastructure questions about infrastructure improvements. These improvements should be incorporated into the overall master plan as part of the related phase.
We can include the infrastructure improvements with our master plan submittal for each of the phases, such as public utilities. We do anticipate this to be minimal. One of the examples would be the snow removal and equipment building, where this may apply. So we'll be sure to include that in the master plan application.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay, the next one is about the management plan. And for any elements of the project that aren't managed by the airport, what is your management plan?
Sure.
I could just start by, I think with respect to permitting and all aspects of developing those projects such as Beta or the hotel, we've been right here with our partners working with them.
Oh.
So that I think that's key. We're as you know, I've been here a lot. So or we've been here a lot. So
And more importantly, these are all formally written in contractual requirements with any of our tenant partners. So, for example, if Pratt and Whitney were to expand that building, there would be requirements as part of the conditions on our contract with those programs, as we have done in the past, and as we'll do with each one of these items, if they're not directly under our control.
Board, do we feel like that's an adequate management plan?
So sorry, do you anticipate any components or phases of the master plan you're thinking about right now having pieces that are not managed by the airport during their operation after they've been completed?
No, even some of these buildings that would be expanded or a hotel that would be this is still and would be managed by the airport directly. We would want to manage the direct exterior of the landscaping and the land. The building itself, of course, contractually would be managed by the maintenance of these particular partners. But if we own the building, we're going to be maintaining it as part of our operational plans.
and there are standards and all that type of stuff in our contracts
Okay.
on how things have to be done to include timing of how it gets done. So
Thank you. Questions, board? Okay, comment number 9, approved at master plan level, which elements will approval be sought for? Let's see. Which components or elements of the project they intend to ask approval at the master plan level? Examples include a palette of landscaping materials and roadway cross sections. Now I'm not understanding my own comments. You've read this. Do you understand what we're getting at? A challenging concept. When done well, it can significantly simplify subsequent reviews by effectively pre-approving certain aspects of a project. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant for which components or elements of the project they intend to ask approval at the master plan level.
And I think we discussed this a little bit like a balancing act, right? The more
Can you
detail
bring the microphone? You're breaking.
Sure.
Thanks.
We understand that the concept is if we provide additional detail at the master plan level, then it's a pre-approving of certain aspects of a project ahead of us submitting a site plan application. And we recognize that it's a balancing of how far along certain projects are in certain phases and what we're able to provide. So our response to that is we appreciate that staff comment and we understand and we will incorporate that appropriately depending on which project and which phase of the master plan when we submit it.
Questions, board? Okay, number 10, this is regarding the context map. As this is the largest parcel within the city, staff recommends the board discuss whether they prefer to see a context map within the vicinity of each project, a less detailed context map for the entire project parcel, or a combination of the two. I kind of thought a combination of the two would be helpful, but what do other members think?
I really appreciate the overview map, page 18 or whatever it was, that showed the locations. And then maybe another page that you could do viewports of just those specific.
yeah, and we've
Projects.
provided most of that in that response.
Yeah.
And like Jackie said, something like Pratt and Whitney isn't far enough along. We're just
Right.
thinking,
100%.
however, the next project is ready to go.
It'd just be great if those viewports that are on top of the overall parcel are not covering
Okay.
up the parcel. So maybe
we
second.
can do that. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. This is number 12, compatibility with the existing structures or sites.
I think you still
one-
gotta do 11.
I'm sorry,
I think we haven't done 11 yet.
we haven't done 11. I'm sorry. You're right.
And actually, this is the most important one. There are a lot of standards that pertain to open spaces and site amenities that permit that require certain things to be on site. The board approved an overall landscaping plan, including this rec path for the airport, back before this concept of site amenity was a requirement. It was being done by the airport as like a new approach to something, and now it's sort of been codified that applicants are required to provide this site amenity. Their site amenity is not within the airport parcel, but is directly adjacent. And so this question is asking, would the board consider the rec path to be on site for the purposes of meeting civic space and site amenity requirements?
Charlie, you look like you have a thought about this.
This is, I mean, this is tough, right? Because it's not one parcel, like you said, right? But it is an extension of like their ownership and limited development on this land because of FAA regulation. Yeah, this is a trick. I don't know. That's tricky.
I would add too, this is a public amenity, and it's not like we're providing this landscape just for ourselves. This is going to be publicly accessible on the adjacent site, not a off-site location. In my thought.
You're going to retain ownership of this land, correct?
Correct. We're required to. If we sell this land, the funds that went into the purchase have to be returned back to the federal government.
Other thoughts?
I think given the situation, it's not like there are other options
Right.
for where to put the amenities. So given the constraints of where it can go, I think this is probably the next best step. And as it's land that's owned by the airport and will continue to be owned by the airport, I'm comfortable with including it in the parcel for the sake of the application.
Okay. Quinn, did I see you nodding yes?
Yeah, I'll echo John's. I don't have concerns with that approach.
Okay.
I think summarize of staff presenting it, the very unique situation, and so it's land that's gonna be owned by the airport, so it's not on site, but it's also not off site. It's not like it's totally disconnected from the parcel. So I don't have concerns. But.
I have a quick question for Marla. If I was a developer and I was developing a piece of land, or if I was the city of South Burlington developing land and I made a site amenity to land adjacent to the city's land, right? For example, if it was like, I don't know, like the water district, right? And they're making an amenity to land that city owned next door, would that be acceptable or no?
Interestingly, in the city center form-based code zoning district, that would absolutely be allowed. Outside, it is not explicitly currently allowed. But
We have to treat
that might
them-
be something that
This is the city of Burlington. We treat them as a separate entity. We don't, and we're not in that zone, so it doesn't matter.
right. I think the idea in form-based code is that it's supposed to be relatively dense, so you're allowed to use 90% of your site for building or whatever. So you should be allowed to have your site amenity off-site, but in other zoning districts, maximum coverage is 70%, and therefore you should have ample room left over to do your site amenity. That may be something we see evolve over time. If form-based code is working, we may expand the areas those rules apply to.
If I recall correctly, when we had the water tower application recently, we kind of ran into a similar issue with,
Right.
the site is so small, where are they going to put it? Can they put to do something across the street on the rec path or something like that? And the previous one with the tank at the treatment
Right.
site,
Chamblee
they
Water
were able to
District.
fit it on there, but there was some discussion about, what if it spilled over? So I think for some of these quasi-governmental sort of sites where it really isn't practical.
Okay, I'm afraid we're at time. We're actually a little over time. So I think we're going to have to continue this to another date. Yes, yes. But we will take a break and have public comment first. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment? Any online?
There was one question typed into the chat. Someone wanted to know if the multi-use path would there be fencing between the path and the homes? If there be fencing between the path and the homes, I don't know if that's a question you can answer at this stage or not.
Yeah, I would say that you're welcome to answer it if you want, but just to clarify for people who are participating, the individual projects will have a more detailed review as they come up. This is an overall sketch plan. So as I said, the airport folks are welcome to answer it, but
I think that's a fine answer.
okay. Unknown at this time.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. So we are going to vote on continuing this. What would be the date?
We have room on, we said the meeting was October 1st, right, Marty? Yep, ample room on October 1st, so 2 meetings from now.
With a little bit we have left, could we get on the next agenda?
Oh, we did have that one push, right?
No, we have 1, 2,
Today?
3,
think
4
there's-
more questions.
We'll be
They're
very
They're
fast.
fairly brief. They're fairly brief comments.
Yeah, I think actually we had one application for the next agenda withdraw, so we could squeeze them on.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Remind me what that date is.
September 17th, but we don't need, I guess it's not a hearing, so we don't need a vote or
Okay.
anything. It's just, we'll see you on September 17th.
Okay, so we will see you back here on September 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. I don't know why that's happening. Okay, the next project is site plan application SP 2430 of Meadowlands Animal Hospital to construct an 8,946 square foot veterinary hospital with supporting parking and infrastructure improvements on an existing undeveloped 4.0 acre lot at 39 Bowdoin Street. Pardon me. Who is here for the applicant, please?
Hi, my name's Ann Culp. I'm with Meadowlands Animal Hospital.
Anne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good to see you all again.
Sam Beal, Duncan Vishnesky Architecture.
And I'm Scott Homestead from Krebs and Lansing Consulting Engineers.
Okay, I'm going to swear you in. Raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Before we start going through the staff report, are there any brief comments you'd like to make?
Just wanted to share that we're happy to be back here. I think many of you were here for the previous site plan application of the other site. The building has not changed much, but we have a new site and a new site plan. So happy to discuss, just move right into the staff comments if that's what you'd like to do.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say, nobody's ever happy to be here. So. Thank you, though. Okay, let's start with number 1. This is approval of the front setback waiver. And there's a question about whether or not the board will approve that. Board, what do we think?
Staff, do you mind talking through what we're?
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah.
the front setback in the zoning district is typically 50 feet. The applicant is proposing 32.7 along Bowdoin Street and 31.2 along Meadowlands. So the question is just, will you allow that reduced setback? Our recommendation is that you do, but it's always up to you.
Could we just get a little testimony as to why?
Sure.
Yeah, so skipping ahead a little bit to 2 and 3, staff did comment on the appropriateness of the site plan as presented because the building is smaller than some of the other adjacent parcels in terms of the building footprint. Furthermore, we are proposing to extend the building in part to address the streetscape, which we think is good practice in this area. We have set the bulk of the building back, so what extends front, in particular on Meadowlands Drive, is simply a porch and a sort of lower structure. So we do need the additional space to make the program work, and as well as to more closely align with the building footprints that currently exist in the industrial park.
I guess big picture, there's a huge wetland on the property, which is why it's all shifted to the one side.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Wanted to get on record.
Any objection to this? No. Okay, good. Moving on. Number 2. This is the questioning the placement and the orientation of the building consistent with solar. So the orientation of the building, pardon me, is not consistent with typical solar gain. Am I correct?
Maybe we were looking at different comments.
I'm sorry, Marty.
I think number 2, I don't know. 2's not about solar, I don't believe.
Let me read it. Staff recommends the board discuss the proposed building's placement and orientation as it relates to the above standard and determine whether the proposed placement and orientation can be described as consistent with the prevalent pattern. I'm sorry, it's not about solar.
There's a very similar comment about solar later. This one's just at a site plan level. Development in an area is supposed to be sort of consistent with a general pattern of development, and so we need a finding that this building is in fact consistent with the prevalent pattern of development on Bowdoin and Meadowlands.
Isn't it largely a industrial park look? Thoughts?
We feel it's consistent. Furthermore, to Marty's previous point, we have a significant environmental condition on the west side of the parcel that limits the buildable area of the parcel. And so even with the extension into the front and both front yard setbacks, we're still at 9,000 square feet. And so to build a larger building is simply impossible on this site to also have parking. And so I think the limitations on this parcel justify the size of the building. And yes, it may be smaller than some of the adjacent footprints, but we do think that it's consistent with the overall character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think, they're dealing with the wetland on site and they're choosing a design to fit the building in and avoid that. I don't have super concerns about it not fitting in with the character, but I don't know if others have. Okay.
Any other comments? I don't either. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Staff recommends the board discuss the proposed building scale as it relates to the above standard and determine whether the proposed contrast in scale can be described as abrupt and therefore require minimization and mitigation. It's a related question, I think. Board? Nobody has any concerns? I guess we'll move on. Staff,
Well,
go ahead.
I'll say, yes, size-wise, this building is going to be smaller than other ones on the parcel. So not to just put it back to staff, but could you speak to if there is any, mitigating what we might recommend in these circumstances to minimize that like contrast? Or I know we've used landscaping before. In this context, it's just not super clear what we might be looking for.
Yeah, I think typically the intent of the regulation might be to go the other way. If something was way too large and out of place, people might be, coming out of the woodwork saying we don't like this. I don't think you typically have people worried about something being a little too small.
Okay.
But the letter of the regulation is letter regulation. So just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page about whether or not this is an abrupt transition in scale that requires some type of screening or something. But
Yeah, I think it being on the corner too kind of help. It's not like huge buildings around it, and then might be helpful. But thank you.
I think it fits well with the other buildings that are
Yeah.
there. Yeah. The only one that's sort of out of place is the one to the north, that from like a shape, and
Is
floor
that the
level.
Keller Williams building?
So I don't know. I think it fits well.
Okay. All right, number 4. This is regarding the size of the parking lot, and the question is, could it be reduced by 2 spaces or moved?
So could you pull up supplementary exhibit number 8, please? So I did review this with the client, and they would like to have a discussion, for us to have a discussion about maintaining the 28 parking spaces because they believe that is what they need to operate here. So to demonstrate to the board what that looks like, we've prepared a rendering from Meadowlands Drive. So the first image there is the existing. So as you see the parcel today looking east along Meadowlands Drive, go to the rendering next. And this is our rendition of what it would look like after the development is installed. And so we have removed one of the street trees, but replaced them with 2 eastern redwoods along each side of the driveway. And we have significant planting along the southeast side there in front of the Adirondack chairs. If you look closely, you can see some cars. Phil did render some cars in there. So that is the parking lot there. However, we think the landscape is going to significantly screen that and, deals with any potential issues in terms of visibility of the parking from the street. So we're comfortable with the design as it is now. We wanted to demonstrate that in more detail to you using this rendering. And we feel like the site plan as presented meets the letter of the regulation, which requires that the parking be behind the building.
So would they need a waiver to keep the parking spaces at the same number they're proposing?
no, they would not.
Okay. So does anyone have any concerns?
Is the green line the front of the building? Is that what you're indicating?
The green line is the standard setback.
So we're giving them a pass on the building setback.
Yeah.
Parking setback. Yeah.
Can you live with that? Okay. Let's move on. Number 5. This is a location and type of site amenity. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so if you could pull up supplemental exhibit number 2, please. So can you zoom in a little bit to the triangular landscaped area in front of the building, please, Marty? Or maybe Marla, you're driving, I'm sorry.
You mean to the west of the building?
No, yes, to the west.
Okay.
That's right. So there's a little line there that says site amenity parklet, 4,600 square feet. And so this landscaped area in front of the building, we believe meets the definition of a parklet. We have 3 benches. We feel like this space is primarily for seating, and it's extensively landscaped with a variety of native species. And so this is...
Bring the mic toward you a little more, please.
This is what we think is the site amenity.
As staff, I would agree that this appears to meet the type and size and all the different requirements for a parklet site amenity. It just wasn't specified in their initial submission, so that's why the red comment was there. I don't think it's controversial to call that a parklet.
It's kind of nice, actually. Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to number 6. So, this is about Department of Public Works and their comments. Let me read the staff comments. Staff recommends the board and applicant discuss whether coordination with the Director of Public Works shall be required prior to a potentially continued hearing. Given the comments, my thought was, how can it hurt? But I'd be interested in what the rest of you think.
Well, I think we would like to discuss, certainly the Public Works comments 1 and 2 are no problem and pretty standard. If you could pull up supplemental exhibit 1, we did add some detail regarding comment number 3, and then I think comment 4 we'd probably want to discuss a little bit with the board. So if you could zoom in right near the entrance, but showing the existing multi-use path. There you go. So basically, Public Works was concerned about the condition of the shared use path in front of the project, and the fact that us building our project and driving in and out and cutting it for utilities would deteriorate that. And so we clarified that we wouldn't just cut little pieces. We'll actually replace that path from the dotted line on the left of the screen here, which is near our first utility crossing, all the way to the second one, which is sort of roughly in front of the building, in between the street tree and the building. So that's about 120 feet of path that we'll cut and replace. So you're not looking at those little cut pieces you get when your neighbor extends a gas line across their sidewalk or whatnot. So that's the limit of that. And then the last comment seemed to be more in concern with the sidewalk, mostly on Bowdoin Street, and we're not really affecting that sidewalk, and we don't think that our particular project should bear the burden of replacing large amounts of sidewalk throughout the park, and that'd be something that should be worked out between the association of all the landowners and Public Works, and that could certainly be done, but we don't think it should be a condition of our site's approval. So just wanted to bring that up.
So are you suggesting that you not have a meeting with DPW before the next stage of review?
Well, I've talked to him, and I guess we just like the board's opinion on whether a singular project in a commercial lot in a commercial park, should have such a condition on their site plan that relates to existing infrastructure that's outside their parcel.
Is it correct that this has not been accepted as a public street?
That's correct.
Meadowlands also, or just Bowdoin Street?
I believe it's all the streets. None of them have been turned over yet. So Tom has, he has a hammer later to require stuff to be done to accept the street, but we just don't think that should hold up our application.
Okay. Board, thoughts?
Do we have any past precedent on this? Because I noticed the comment does say that the streets are still private. They're working to accept them from the original developers, which I assume is going to mean they're going to have to bring some things up to current code before the city will accept them anyway. But I don't know if we have any precedent on this or past history.
My understanding is that Meadowland Business Park is an association, and the owners of Meadowland Business Park are largely the occupants, partially the occupants of the buildings. They used to be largely the occupants of the buildings. So it's a lot of big players with which you're familiar ownership shares in the Meadowland Business Park. I don't know anything about this process of acceptance. Did you have a chance to talk to Tom about that?
I guess from my standpoint, 1 through 3 have been basically answered by the applicant, and that item 4 is I think, private matter that if they wanted to turn over to city, they would have to meet city standards, right? So I don't think they need to meet with the Director of Public Works
Okay.
for this specific item.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. Absent anything else, if they're not touching it, I don't see that they should be responsible for bringing it up to current conditions. The business association will have to deal with that with everything
Okay.
else.
Okay, let's move on to number 7. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to comply with the comments of the South Burlington Water Division Director prior to issuance of a zoning permit.
We've gone back and forth with the South Burlington Water Department and addressed all their concerns. We included an email correspondence indicating such as a supplemental exhibit number 5. I don't know that you need to read it. We're certainly fine with that.
Okay, number 8. This is regarding the screening of the dumpster, and we need a description so we can determine if it's compliant. And
Can you pull up
the
supplemental
condition
exhibit
of
3?
approval. You don't have to tell
Oh,
us
sorry.
now, but
Yeah, well, we have a supplemental exhibit 3 where we have an image of the dumpster enclosure.
Okay,
So if
thank
you wanted to pull that up, or we can deal with it as a condition. But the planting details, L2.1. So down at the bottom, that cedar fence enclosure is what we're proposing for the dumpster. And when we get to number 14, we can come back and look at the fence.
okay. All right, looks fine to me. Any thoughts? Other thoughts? No? Okay, number 9, staff recommends the board require the applicant to update the submitted plan set to include the location of this easement as a condition of approval.
You can find that on supplemental exhibit 1. We added the easement on the plan.
Okay. Number 10, staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide the requested details for the city arborist review prior to closing the hearing.
Supplemental exhibit number 3 has planting details for trees and shrubs.
Marty? So you had said prior to closing the hearing. Can you provide an updated thought, if any?
Yeah, I mean, typically details are pretty standard across the board. It's just like a zoomed in version of the tree, you know? So I don't think that it's typically reviewed in great detail. I think it just was something a box that had to be ticked.
Okay, is that enough detail for us?
Staff, yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Number 11. Is that right? Yes. This is about the 5 islands. Staff recommends the board and applicant discuss whether the 5 identified islands can include additional plantings to better meet the above criterion.
Great. So if you could pull up the planting plan, exhibit number 2. So we did add additional plants to the bottom corner of the parking lot. If you zoom into the southwest area, please, down on the page. Yes. So these 5 viburnum dentatum were added after the comment was received in an effort to better meet this ordinance, these regulations. And so to that end, we believe we're meeting the regulations, but we've tried to demonstrate that we've gone a little bit beyond.
Questions?
I guess I brought that one up because it was, what does it say there? 10% of the interior of the parking lot shall be landscaped islands. Those landscaped islands shall be planted with trees, shrubs, or other plants. I think at the time of the initial submittal, only 2 of the 5 islands had plantings. I guess the other 3 were grass. And so now at this time, we're looking at, it looks like the top left kind of triangle is counted as an island, and that's still just grass.
Yes.
And then I think there was one in the back there. But now we're up to 3 of the 5 with trees.
That's correct. We need somewhere to push the snow.
I think yes, snow storage will be an issue too, but this requirement requires them to be landscaped with trees or shrubs. So,
it says at least 10% of the interior of the parking lot shall be landscaped islands planted with trees. And so, according to Marty's initial, 11.5% is landscaped islands.
Yeah.
I guess I
Landscape
don't
islands have
understand.
to
Do
be
all of
landscaped with something. Grass is not.
so you have your 11.5% of the islands. Landscaped with grass doesn't meet the landscaped island requirement. So the point is your design has the potential, it has that 10% threshold that's met, but that landscaping piece has to be present in each island as well.
So we have 3 out of 5 with landscape. I'm worried that if I landscape the remaining 2, I have nowhere to put snow during winter. And so I'm curious if other applicants have been able to accommodate this particular provision while still providing for winter.
Yeah, I think everyone mostly does it. You can just push to somewhere that's not an island. Like, for example, over the curb somewhere. I guess it's tricky on your site with the wetlands. Some people will just haul snow off site if they really can't make it work. We see that mostly in city center. But yeah, typically the point.
The other thing we hear from the city arborist is that plants should be set back 10 feet from the curb in order to be protected from snow. So if a parking space is 18 feet long, you can certainly get a tree in the back of this area and still, according to what he uses as a rule of thumb, have a safe tree, just like this one is safe from snow, according to his rule of thumb, because it's 10 feet back.
I see. So if we added a tree further toward, basically to the west of the dumpster enclosure, that would satisfy the island being landscaped while still preserve some space for snow.
Well, I haven't seen your landscape. This is Marty's application, so I haven't seen your exhibit demonstrating what is considered an island. But if your island, oh dear, now I've done it. All right. If your island is from here to here, and this is the area inside this triangle that counts to make up your 11%, in order to be landscaped, you'd have to put the tree within that island. But I still think that, way in the back of it is more than 10 feet from the pavement, eyeballing it.
Okay.
I also think that there was a staff comment regarding landscaping budget, so I just want to make sure that the board keeps both of those in mind I'm not saying push this conversation, I'm saying is relevant as well.
Well, one of my questions about the landscaping budget was 6 more shade trees are required. No, 1 more. For 20 parking spaces, it requires 6 shade trees and only 5 are provided. And my question was, well, if you reduce the parking lot, but you're saying you don't want to do that, so you need 1 more shade tree.
We added a shade tree in the landscape plan, so we believe we're in compliance with that at this point.
Okay.
So where is the board on the landscaping islands?
So can you add to the landscape islands?
We can. I did not understand that every island needed to be landscaped. That's my ignorance, and I'm sorry. But if the board wanted to make that a condition of approval, we can certainly accommodate that.
Okay. Go ahead.
We have to be careful with our conditions of approval that it's detailed enough. And so could you say what tree, do you think each of the 3 islands that we're looking at here will each have, you're just going to put 1 tree on there and what the species will be? Is that the level of detail we might want to look for?
Yeah, so the condition of approval needs to be specific enough that any person could read the condition of approval and then look at the plan and say they met this or they didn't meet this. Better landscaped is a little too vague to be a condition of approval.
Certainly,
so
better landscaped is not,
After we go through maybe the landscaping budget conversation, and then we can revisit and say if you're thinking of adding 2 trees of a certain species anyway, then we can just say put one in one island and one in the other, and maybe we can call it.
And 10 feet back. And
Yeah, and maybe we can call it a day, but maybe we should have that conversation first and then come back to this one about islands. Yeah.
Okay.
12, I think, was the one in between shade trees and yeah.
So number 12 is regarding the curbing requirement. Are you prepared to meet that?
We've added it to the civil plan that
Okay.
was submitted.
Number 13, this is regarding the additional shade tree. We can come back to that if need be. Number 14, this is regarding the landscaping budget. Staff recommends that the board confirm the most recent overall project cost estimate, excluding all equipment and machinery costs. Discuss which of the landscaping elements other than plants are an acceptable use of the landscaping budget funds, and direct the applicant to revise all components of the proposed landscaping budget that are found to be unacceptable.
Yeah, so we've submitted a new landscape budget based on this feedback. So could you pull that up, please? It's supplemental exhibit number 4. So we took out the gravel path, which we actually needed to because that was a mistake between Scott and myself. That was another piece of pervious area that wasn't accounted for in the stormwater calculations. So that's been removed from the plans, but also removed from this budget. So at this point, we have mostly plants. We have one exterior bench that is in the eastern landscaped area, which is not part of our site amenity. We also have exposed aggregate concrete at the front, which is a step above your standard concrete. That $2 per square foot unit cost represents the cost of the exposed aggregate rather than the concrete itself. We have an image of what exposed aggregate concrete looks like in the planting details if you're interested. So we're relying primarily on plants to meet our budget. We have added soft costs and the contracting costs on top of that because that is the cost to do the work. But even with the plant cost, even just with the sub costs alone, we believe we're meeting the intent of the ordinance, which I believe is $50,000 as calculated for our planting budget. So if we are to add a couple more trees to better meet or more fully meet the landscaped triangle requirements of the parking lot, I think will push us even more in compliance with the planting budget required.
So if that's a condition of approval, you're fine with that?
I believe so.
I just had a question, and I don't know if I'm recalling this incorrectly. When we've counted improved walkway area as part of landscaping budget, is it correct that we do with the cost of the concrete and just the differential? So is that accounted for here in this $2 unit cost, or would we need to kind of subtract that out and thinking about it?
I believe that's what you said. It's the
This
difference
is the
between.
delta.
You did? Okay,
Yes.
sorry. I missed that.
I wish we could install concrete for $2 a square foot.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That's
My projects would
figured
all be
that.
on budget.
I missed that in the overview, so. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the comments.
Just to go back and clarify, so the project cost estimate in the staff report that I had included was the one that you had initially provided in your site plan application of 4.3 million. That's still the number?
Yes.
Okay, so then the landscape budget is still 50,875.
Correct.
And with your subtotal still is exceeding that.
Correct.
Okay, cool. 53,000. So then we're okay on landscaping budget, as long as you guys are okay with the bench and the exposed aggregate concrete.
Okay, I hear no objection. So let's move on. 15, staff recommends the board require the applicant to address the comments of the city stormwater section prior to closing the hearing.
Yeah, we worked with, after submitting our site plan application, we worked with Monica at the stormwater section, and we think we've addressed all of her comments. We removed, there was, as Sam mentioned, there was a little mix up where there was a landscaping plan that was showing a gravel path that our plans did not, but that's now been removed. And the EPSC comments are easy. I guess my only comment would be I'd rather that be a condition of, maybe that could be a condition of approval rather than holding up the closing of the hearing, because we won't have any problems meeting her requirements.
Yeah, fine. Okay, last comment. This is the fence details, but I think we've already seen a photograph of the fence, so I think we're good with that. Okay, thank you. Let's see.
Just real quick, to circle back to the condition of approval part on the landscape islands, I guess there's no budget required here, so it's just a matter of putting 2 or 3. Is it 2 or 3 that are unlandscaped right now?
It would be
Just
2.
2. Okay, so do you want to pick a species and a caliper, and then we say they have to be within the island, but at least 10 feet back, and I think that's specific enough.
Yeah, if you could
Can I
zoom into the
suggest you
trees.
pick from the list of trees that you already have?
Absolutely. That's what I was going to ask you to zoom in so we can pick.
And keep in mind, shade trees need to be a minimum 2.5 inch installed.
Okay. I believe we're meeting our shade tree requirements, so these trees could be any of them. Let's say they're the eastern redbud. Redbud, please. Circus canadensis.
Okay. Where's that? Okay.
Works for me. Yeah.
Let's see if there's any public comment. Are there any members here, first of all, it's in the audience, who wish to make public comments about this application? Seeing none, are there any online?
No, I wanted to give it a count of 3 before I answered.
Okay. All right, then I guess I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of closing SP 2430, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for your time.
Okay. Should we take a break? Or is it too early? Okay. I think we're going to take a 5-minute bio break, please. Let's resume. Okay, the next project is continued master plan application MP 2403 of WGM Associates to subdivide an existing approximately 10-acre lot development with 3 homes and an existing non-conforming commercial or private parking facility into 10 single-family home lots ranging from 0.26 acres to 2.05 acres, 1 single-family home lot with an existing non-conforming commercial or private parking facility on 1.52 acres, and 1 1-acre civic space lot at 850 Hinesburg Road. Who is here for the applicant?
Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates, and
Keith Wright.
What is your last name, please?
Right.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Keith. I guess I have to swear you in. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Welcome. So you know the drill. We're going to go through the staff report and focus on the highlighted, well, they're not highlighted, it's the red questions, and ask you for responses. And I'm wondering, do you have any very brief comments you want to make before we launch in?
Again, Dave Marshall for the record. This application follows the sketch plan review that the board had before them previously, generally consistent with that concept that had been proposed to the board. And with that, we've essentially added more flesh to the bone with regard to not only this master plan application, but also the preliminary plan application that is also scheduled just after this particular one. There are obviously going to be some issues that go back and forth, but when we follow the staff report, the first one is the master plan. So with that setting the tone for the overall project, we would then dive into the preliminary plan.
Great, thank you. So the first comment is really a homework assignment for those of us on the board. And there won't be a quiz, but I I'm assuming that we've all read that. Let's move on to number 2. So a question to the board is, do we consider the silo a utility cabinet?
So there may be some assistance if we bring up a plan. So in this particular case, on the master plan, we have, let's go to sheet, oops. I'm trying to page together the pages of the
That's
staff
all right, Dave.
report.
We didn't rename them. So if you call it the sheet
So
number, we can pull it
23,
up.
yeah. So page 23 represents the master plan. This is the existing condition plan. So to orient you, north is straight up on this particular plan. In the top left or the northwest corner is the existing commercial use on the property that coexists with the 3 residential homes, all on a 10+ acre property. And with that, there is an existing silo that's used for cell service, I'll call them towers, but essentially they're attached and inside of this particular silo. And with the proposed subdivision, what we've done is created an isolated parcel that services or basically will support these particular utility uses. And with that, the discussion point is this particular type of utility intended as part of the land development regulations to be eligible for a smaller than a normal lot size.
So my impression is, yes, it is a utility cabinet. Does anyone disagree with that? No. Okay, thanks. Let's move on. Number 3. So does this mean that there's no path on the west of the road? Last sentence, staff considers provision of additional right-of-way to be unwarranted and recommends the board confirm their agreement with this interpretation.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces here. Effectively, the city plan shows that there is a shared use path along Hinesburg Road. It is shown sort of next to Hinesburg Road only because of mapping. It's not intended to designate the one side or the other. It's intended to just not overlap other things on a page. So the city has a plan to eventually develop a rec path. The existing homes, you can see the property line. It's a little bit thicker than the other north-south lines, are right up against that. So typically when somebody develops in an area where there's planned infrastructure, they have to accommodate its future construction or construct it themselves. Because of the location of the existing home, staff considers that making additional accommodations is outside of the scope of what should be required, and wanted to make sure that the board was okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine. Any objection? Okay, let's move on to number 4. This is about the community garden civic space. And the question is, will it be shared within the master plan area?
So the answer is yes. There will be specific rights provided to each one of the property owners to access across the proposed driveway, shared driveway, roadway, depending on what nomenclature we want to use, in order to access the common area.
Okay, kind of like a tennis court or something.
Yes.
Questions? Okay, number 5. Well, the request and determination of the type of civic space to be assigned to this lot will take place with the Phase 1 preliminary plat. Pardon me. Staff recommends at this stage that the board ask the applicant to describe what measures will be included in order for the stormwater practice to complement and serve the intent of the civic space.
Sure. So I don't know if we have a plan that will help everybody orient themselves and with regard to that particular portion of the property. But within the 1 acre of common area, so Marty has brought up generally a plan. So we can stay with this one. So this is out of the master plan. This is ultimately a concept in regards to how the property could be developed through its three plus phases. But as you look in the top third of this particular drawing on the right hand side, there's a T or hammerhead turnaround. And to the right of that is a proposed gravel wetland. And the gravel wetland essentially is provides a they call it a muck surface that provides for certain wetland species to be able to be propagated and to enhance the area. Also associated with this particular stormwater management facility is a forebay, and the forebay is intended to be an open water surface to allow for certain sediment that would be coming off of the property to be first settled before it goes into the gravel wetland. One of the features of that particular forebay is to decant off the top of the water, that's the cleanest water, and actually use it for irrigation for those areas on the south of that particular area. So what is up on screen right now represents in the red area the phase one component of the project, and in the kind of the grayish area where the prompt is represents the gravel wetland, and south of that is the forebay. So the land actually falls off in the southerly direction, so we have the opportunity to use gravity as a means of utilizing that particular runoff, essentially recycling for irrigation purposes for those particular planting areas south of that particular stormwater management facility. So we felt that it was because of the ability to plant it out in a way that could be very aesthetically pleasing, that it represented potentially an amenity in regards to at least the aesthetic features of this particular common garden area of the project.
Okay, that's a good explanation. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, number 6. This is regarding the roadway. Staff recommends the board confirm with the applicant that their request to construct the road as gravel only extends to phase 1, and they would accept a condition requiring the road be brought to public road standards at such time as the road extends to an adjacent lot. Pardon me. Staff further recommends the board confirm the applicant's request to provide an open drainage system, sheet flow to swale, and to omit a dedicated sidewalk applies to the entire master plan. Assuming this is correct, and if the board ultimately approves the applicant's request, staff considers the applicant must modify the plans to indicate that phase 2 includes improvements to the phase 1 roadway. What is your response to that?
So that's not quite a run-on sentence, but there's a lot of information.
Yes.
So a couple of things going
Are we
on
teaching
here.
English here?
Fair enough. So in this particular case, the feature of phase 1 is essentially a shared driveway. And right now, the rights have utilized a gravel surface, a crushed stone surface that actually is very well constructed. And Keith will have to take credit for that. And he wants to the family would like to basically extend that same feature, with the understanding that phase 1 has 3 additional units and 1 ADU. So it's not a high traffic use area. It's one that structurally is very durable. If it's anything like the existing system that's constructed already in place on the left side of the drawing that you're seeing in front of you. So with that, we have a phase 1 component that basically says, let's not overkill this particular shared driveway and utilize essentially the technology and the features that are already in place. So that's question number 1. There's a statement in regards to the need or the lack of proposal to put in a sidewalk. And in this particular case, phase 1 does not propose a sidewalk. I think it does raise the question when phase 2 and phase 3 are put into place that there probably should be those particular types of amenities in place. So It's the applicant's position that if the project were to go forward that with phases 2 and phase 3, that supplemental infrastructure be supportive of the increased density of the full build out of the project. So right now, the family's plan is not to do anything other than phase 1. But as part of the compliance requirements, we needed to show a full master plan development of the property, and that's essentially what you have in front of you. So with that, we ultimately are asking the board to consider the fact that this is a very interesting application and the fact that it's located in the industrial zoning district. Normally, that means that the density is 3 acres per lot. So, you know, the first goal of the family is to take the 3 existing homes and put them on their own lot. So 10 divided by 3, you know, actually works out fairly nicely. What has happened in the meantime is Act 47 has jumped in, as set forth by our legislature, the new law that basically says wherever you have water and sewer available to properties, that you're eligible for up to 5 units per acre. You know, the family's not interested in doing that. In fact, they enjoy being surrounded by commercial property because they kind of know their neighbors really well. That being the background, this goal of this application is essentially to provide additional family members, the next generation, a place to live. So with that being the background, we need to work within the land development regulations and the exemptions that are allowable to enable the application to be able to move forward. So I've just talked a lot about the preliminary plat application in the master plan, but they do meld together when certain questions are asked. And in this particular case, what ultimately will be another discussion point, either later in this application or in the preliminary plan application, is that also the recommendation is that if we go beyond phase 1 with any of these proposed road expansions and residential units, that the roadway does get paved, which is fine. We're all good with that. So what we're trying to do is just create a layered approval process that recognizes that phase 1 is fairly minimal in character, that it is not a high density neighborhood that's trying to be created, that it is essentially a more open space character, which is what the industrial open space district is all about. And with that, we're just trying to work with staff as well as the board on finding a ways to enable this to happen. Again, this is the same concept that was presented to the board as part of sketch plan as far as at least phase 1. Phase 2 and phase 3 are infill components that you never saw before. So this is the opportunity to have the discussion of what makes sense. And I think as we move through some of the comments, you'll see ultimately all of that come together.
Okay, questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I think that's a worthwhile introduction, setting up some of this and some of the later comments. But I think a portion of this comment is still outstanding in my mind. You said clearly that, and I apologize for the phrasing on this, but the request is to leave phase 1 unpaved, but then go back and pave the phase 1 roadway if phase 2 and 3 are built, which is fine. The question that wasn't answered is the proposal to keep it an open drainage system and an integrated sidewalk for the entire master plan, or would you go back to phase 1 and do a closed drainage and separate sidewalk?
So that's a good question. I think ultimately, to answer part of the question, that a sidewalk along the entire roadway system would be a component of phase 2 going forward. The question in regards to open stormwater, so traditional neighborhood curbed, catch basins, enclosed drainage system, and what we have here is actually recommendations from Public Works Department itself, not on this application, but on a prior project on Meadowland Drive, which is just to the south and still in the industrial open space district for Randall Street. They specifically asked for there to be no curbs and a swale on the side of the roadway, specifically to make it easier for their plows to basically maneuver this area. So, and it also typically, when the swales are done correctly, also reduces the maintenance requirements and exposures to very expensive catch basins and perhaps drainage pipe repairs over time. So we adopted that concept with this particular application in regards to the open swale. And I think in this particular case, that would still be the recommendation based on the limited density of the remaining phases that we carry forward that particular concept for those phases also. So yes, including sidewalk, yes, including paving, but maintaining open swales as far as more of the open character of the area.
Okay. And then I just wanted to call the board's attention to a comment that I sort of embedded in here. There's a lot more discussion of the roadway embedded in the preliminary plat. If you get through both this master plan and the preliminary plat, I think it's fine to close them both, but I recommend that you sort of keep the master plan open until you're done reviewing the preliminary plat, and then you kind of go back and close master plan tonight if that's appropriate.
I did see that. You alluded to that. Right. Okay, number 7. Thank you, Marla. This is about the utilities must be within the future right-of-way. Can you please modify the utilities to be within the future right-of-way?
We will try. All right, this just represents a frustration not with the city, but actually with the state of Vermont, where they've adopted new rules that require significant distances between a water main and stormwater pipes or swales. And we don't agree with them, but we have to comply with them. So one of the things that is a challenge is, again, just how do we put this phase 1 infrastructure in that makes sense with regard to the homes that will be served, but at the same time also serve the needs of the master, the state, on their particular horizontal separation distances. So this is one that I'd really like to work with Jay Nato at the Water Department on in finalizing a solution. The family's approach has always been that this would be a private roadway, and that it wasn't intended to be designed to be taken over by the city. However, we recognize that there are certain obligations that the LDRs put forward, and we need to make sure that ultimately there's a package that if somebody else, some future family member, chooses to go forward with phase 2s and phase 3, that ultimately phase 1 has not put them in an untenable position to enable that to happen. So I think that's still an open item that can't be conditioned, that we still need to do some homework on in order to clean that up for you.
Questions? Okay. Number 8. This is around fire protection and what you need to address in preliminary plat, whether it is sprinkled or is that the word sprinklered? Sprinkler.
I have just as much trouble with it as you do.
I support that word. We do use that word. So, anyways, there's kind of a process that occurred where initially the applicant was looking to minimize their water service costs and simply size the water line in a way that would satisfy the needs of the residential homes. But when they met with the fire department, it was quite clear that if you didn't provide a traditional large diameter main and hydrant, that they all would have to be sprinklered. So they came out of that meeting and said, okay. They did a little bit more homework and found that what the costs were for doing sprinkling of individual homes, and at the same time got hit overhead by Jay Nato from the water department that says, you'll put in a water main. So they kind of connected the two and said, okay, we'll do the water main and we won't have to do the sprinkling. So that's ultimately where we think we will end up, and what we need to do is ultimately make sure that the fire marshal is online with that particular aspect.
Actually, I have spoke to the fire marshal, and he said if I put a fire hydrant halfway down, I will meet all their requirements.
Okay, good.
He wanted a minimum of a 6-inch pipe.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Yep.
See, David said it. Sprinklered.
I did. Guilty as charged.
Okay, number 8. Wait, nope, 9. This is regarding the block configuration. Staff recommends that the board affirm the guidance provided at sketch, that they will approve the proposed block configuration.
So Marty, this may be a good opportunity to bring up the master plan without the color, just because it's a little easier to see. And what we're trying to do is identify that there is essentially a block that is being proposed. It's slightly larger than the standard number that's in the LDRs, but at the same time, what we're also trying to do is create some sort of connectivity between Route 116 and ultimately a private driveway. That's the one. That driveway goes out to Lane Press, I believe, as far as that bottom right of the drawing. So ultimately, there's still some discussions with other parties in order to enable that particular roadway to occur in the future. But that being the background, we wanted to at least create the template for how to create essentially a super block in this area.
Okay. Questions? No? All right. Number 10, we need agreement about the total number of dwelling units, and the ADUs don't count. So is it 12 units, or how many dwelling units will there be?
Right.
Not counting the ADUs.
So there's a couple of things going on. There's 3 existing homes. There's 9 additional units, and mixed in with that is a duplex. So there's some confusion even in my mind as far as how to best describe the proposed master plan build out. So in this particular case, we consider it be 12 units plus 1 ADU, just because I can't give up on the ADU discussion, even though statutorily wise it's considered to be 1 unit on a lot. So we're open to whatever we want to describe, but the plans that Marty had up on screen help identify that. So in this particular case, the duplex is on the very bottom of phase 3. Otherwise, they're all single-family homes, with the understanding that in the top right, that's the ADU unit that's proposed as part of the project.
Okay, so fortunately, this is something I have a lot of experience because we have to write project descriptions. The project has 12 dwelling units consisting of 10 single-family homes and 2 units in a duplex building. Is how we would describe that. Which means, and that reason this is relevant is because then there are some things that happen when you get over a certain number. So the next comment gets to that. I think I phrased it poorly, but staff comment number 11 should be revised to say the applicants proposed 10 single-family homes and 1 duplex for a total of 12 homes. And then, is this an adequate mix?
I'll
and that's
second
a question
that.
for the board.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. What did you say for the board?
And that's a question for the board, as whether, because the LDRs require a mix of building types.
Right.
Is 10 of one and 2 of another an adequate mix?
I think my recollection of us kind of considering this question before has been in more multifamily type developments, in which we've kind of taken the approach that a mix means something's different. So I would say what's being proposed is sufficient based on what I think how we've applied this before. I don't know if others.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that's right. You moved on to 11. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, number 12. The applicant has not broken out the resource land. Since resource land is non-buildable, staff recommends the board require the applicant to update the table to include it as a separate line item. This could be a condition of approval. Are you okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay, 13. Rights of way are to be included in residential land use. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to update the table.
Will do.
Perfect, thank you. 14, as an existing nonconformity that is permitted to remain, staff recommends the board require the applicant to include the commercial parking facility as part of the residential land use type. Staff considers this can be a condition of approval.
That's fine also.
Okay. All right, number 15. How will the applicant meet inclusionary unit requirements?
So in this particular case, what we like to think is that we're creating 9 additional units of housing, and that one of the duplex units in phase 3 would be inclusionary to satisfy the 10% of the 9 additional units.
And do you, just for my own information, do you expect all of these will be owned by family members, Keith?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no plan to sell any of the land or any of that. We've always been a close-knit family.
Okay.
And my grandfather bought the land a little over 100 years ago, and we've all been raised there, and we just want to continue doing the same thing.
So the inclusionary unit will be for someone in the family?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Questions, anyone?
So I think, given what Dave just said, I might change this in the draft decision. I think Dave very gently implied that I have gotten this wrong. Inclusionary is required for more than 12. They're adding 9. So I am not sure if this applies or not. But either way, there's a game plan moving forward, and the draft decision might look a little different than what's here.
Okay. Okay. Number 16. This is regarding the peak hour trips. And those have not been, the number have not been adjusted. The number has not been adjusted since the number of units have increased. So do you need to update that?
Actually, that one is good, only because we rounded up before, and with the 1 additional unit, it still remains at 12.
Okay. And same with water use. Has that changed with the additional units?
That one will change, and those numbers will get larger, and I have them written down here, but we'll provide them to staff as part of supplemental information to update the application.
Thank you. Okay. Number 18. This is construction staging areas. Staff recommends blah, blah, blah. Staff considers inclusion of a construction area, particularly for the road, to be a safeguard against potential zoning violations. I think the concern is if you kind of create one on your own, it might be a violation, considered a violation.
Right. So we did review this with Keith, and specifically, I don't know, Marty, if you can bring up the colored master plan sheet. There we go. So in this particular case, we reviewed the road construction requirements, and many times a contractor loves a laydown area. It's basically a place to put materials in support of the construction. What their idea were is that they would actually use any one of those 3 lots as far as their initial construction laydown area, so there was no additional area required as part of the phase 1 work for constructing the roadway.
Okay, questions? Okay. Number 19. This is about the roadway. Staff recommends the board include a condition recommending that the city council not accept the roadway until such time as it connects to a roadway on the adjacent property to the south. Okay, you can live with that? Good.
We're good.
Okay, that's it for the staff comments. Let's turn to public comment. Are there any members of the public who are here tonight in the auditorium who have comments to make about this proposal? Are there any online? There are none. Okay. Then, boy, we're right on time. That's great.
So I would recommend just not moving, not voting on closing or continuing until you've finished review of preliminary
Right.
plat and then circle back.
Okay.
Well, I think we'll be continuing this one regardless, because I think there's a couple items Dave still had to.
Yeah, if I may be rude and jump in,
Yeah.
I think we want to keep probably both applications
Yeah.
open. So we won't be trying to close the hearing,
Okay.
only because we still need to work with Public Works and the Water Division specifically. I think we're good with stormwater, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Whoops. So in this particular case, certainly the question will be eventually, what date do we want to continue to? But I'm now trying to do your job, and I shouldn't be doing that. So.
Thank you. Okay, then let us move ahead to the next application. I can find it here.
I think doing both at the same time.
Okay. All right. This is continued sketch plan application SD 2414.
No, the one before.
Thank you. Continued preliminary plat application SD 2408 of WGM Associates for Phase 1 of a concurrent master plan for development consisting of 11 single-family homes and an existing non-conforming commercial or private parking facility. The phase consists of the creation of 7 lots, 3 containing existing single-family homes, 2 to contain new homes, 1 to contain an existing non-conforming commercial or private parking facility and new home, and 1 civic space lot at 850 Hinesburg Road. And you're still sworn in. So let me just set this again. Are there any comments you want to make before we start reviewing the staff comments?
No, I think the staff did a great job summarizing the conditions of the application. And in light of not keeping things going later than they have to, I think you've heard many of the ideas of the applicant, and we're happy to move through the comments.
Okay, and the comments are long in this report. Number 1, staff notes the regulations are set up to require an urban form, and the applicant's proposal is unusual in that it takes advantage of the dichotomy between the existing zoning and Act 47 to propose a density lower than would otherwise be permitted for residential development. Fundamentally, the board needs to decide how it wants to deal with this dichotomy. If they find the applicant's proposed broadly acceptable, the applicant's request for modification of various standards should be approvable. If they find it to be unacceptable, the project as proposed may not be viable. Staff recommends the board discuss. So, the dichotomy is between the existing zoning in Act 47 regarding density and I'm going to ask for some clarity here, please.
For me?
Yeah.
Well, sorry,
go ahead.
I'm also processing, but on its face, I don't have issue with what's being proposed. And as far as the type of modifications of various standards we might have to approve based on this use being in this area in the zoning district, will that become more evident as we work through this staff report? Like, is this kind of a loop back later? I'm just having a hard time knowing.
Yeah, so the
if
reason
we'll be
they're
able
asking for
to.
modifications is because their proposal is really neither consistent with industrial, obviously, because it's residential, nor consistent with what the city's goals are for residential development, which is dense clustered development. So if if their proposal is generally acceptable, then the board should consider their request for modification also generally acceptable because they're consistent with that problem.
Okay. I see. Thank you.
Are we good with that?
Well, I think Act 47 says we have to be. So,
Okay.
absent any further guidance in the LDRs as to how we're supposed to handle this, then it falls upon us. But clearly, they could have gone for a much more dense development.
Right.
And there's nothing in 47 that says they have to maximize the development. It
Right.
just gives them the opportunity to go beyond what's permitted in the LDRs. So, I don't see any reason why we would deny that. So, I think we got to work with what we got.
Okay. Charlie?
Yeah, we've talked about this in previous meetings on this project, and I agree with that previous.
Okay. Okay, the next. Ooh, they're long. Number 2, staff acknowledges the dichotomy in the proposal. With that in mind, if the board is inclined to accept an alternative compliance approach to the roadway design, they tie it directly to phasing and be clear on both short-term and longer-term expectations, namely that improving the full roadway length and providing pedestrian infrastructure is a requirement of future phases, and that until and unless the road and associated infrastructure are fully built to public standards, they will not be considered for acceptance as a public infrastructure. My sense is you get that.
Yes, that was our testimony earlier, that was the vision that we had as far as phasing the physical improvements on the property.
Okay.
That as density or number of units increases, that the supporting compliance also becomes improved.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Number 3, staff recommends the board review the above paragraphs pertaining to alternate compliance and the comments of the Director of Public Works and discuss each of the applicant's requests.
I have a question on the first one. The current driveway that's state right of way that it exits onto, or is it city right of way? Is 116 ends before there, or is it still 116 where their
No,
driveway?
it's a state road.
So the 3 areas are the crushed stone surface in lieu of bituminous concrete, substitution of a swale in lieu of curbing and enclosed drainage system, and consolidation of the sidewall and roadway into one surface as part of the shared use design for low volume roadways.
So for the first one, I think possibly only Charlie, but maybe also Quinn, because of what she does on a day-to-day basis, are going to understand this. It's not just the bituminous concrete surface; it's also increasing the K value for the vertical alignment. So if the road is approved with this higher K value, it wouldn't ever meet city standards, even if it were paved.
So can we take a step back? Does everybody know what a K value is?
No.
Okay, so it's a description of how quickly a crest curve is either really sharp or it's really broad, or at the same time a sag curve. If you're going really fast and you hit a really short sag curve, what happens to your stomach? Ooh. So anyways, long story short is that the standards adopted in the Public Works standards, newly published, actually have adopted the agency, AASHTO's, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Engineers, organizations, standards that date back to the 1950s. And the idea was to basically provide these very nice, calm roadways that will handle traffic at a very high speed. So in the meantime, that same group had actually published a new standard for low volume roadways because they recognize that trying to apply highway standards to essentially shared driveways didn't make a lot of sense, only because of the character of the usage. And they were also finding that the accident rates were much lower on these low speed roads than the high speed roads. The irony of it all. So, anyways, long story short, we've just asked for the adoption of these alternate standards that are published by a national organization as part of the approval process to allow the shared roadway driveway to work more with the landform than against. So that's the high level picture of K values, the gravel surface consistent with what's out there today, and at the same time also making sure whatever does get built is something that can be built upon even further by supporting the pavement surface that is we're asking for a waiver from. Waiver, wrong word, but at least an exemption from at this point in time.
So the grades and gravel road that will be in phase one are to serve as the subgrade for the paved road.
That is correct. In fact, it's even better than the public works standards as far as the sub base and base materials as far as what's proposed. So I'm very comfortable with that, you know. And then the public works director said, "Hey, you got to make sure that whatever's out there can handle, you know, emergency vehicles." Well, Keith's driveway handles
100,000-pound trucks.
regularly.
Yes.
Every day. So it's one that is built to endure, and that is the proposal to basically carry that same construction technique and typical section down through the proposed shared driveway, shared roadway.
So what other discussion do we need to have about number 3, or does that cover it? And are we good with that?
I'm going to jump in on number 3 if I.
Yes.
So the one idea is to dedicate or to identify how the walkway is separate of the travel way of the vehicles. And when you have shared use, essentially it's all one surface. You know, the idea being is that if you have a small enough amount of traffic that you don't need to have separate facilities for the different types of modes of transportation. So an exaggeration is your driveway. You know, if you have a single family home and you have driveway, do you have a sidewalk next to it? Well, of course not. You walk out to the mailbox, you just share the road with whoever else is coming home from the family. If you have a shared driveway, same situation. You know, it's just there is a point in time when you have enough traffic on the roadway that you can't have pedestrians on there at the same time. But in this particular case, as far as the documentation we provided in the application, that this particular proposal for phase 1 just doesn't rise to that particular level of needing a separate sidewalk facility. My concern about taking a 20-foot wide, which is the standard detail for a narrow neighborhood street from the LDRs, and allocating perhaps 4 feet of it with a different color surface material. Yes, it would look like a place where the pedestrians could go, but now you only have 16 feet for two-way traffic. So are you allowed to drive on the sidewalk, so-called? So in this particular case, shared use essentially is a shared use surface, consistent one way or the other. And in this particular case, I think that would be the one pushback we have in regards to trying to find a delineation specific to pedestrians for that particular type of use.
Thoughts?
Consistent with the conversation earlier, I think I'm comfortable for phase 1 with 3 houses to do kind of the shared driveway thing. And as has already been agreed, that if they go past that to 2 or 3, then the road's going to be paved. There's going to be sidewalks. It's going to be upgraded. So I'm comfortable with that, given the small extent of the development.
Right. Safety doesn't seem to be an issue.
No.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to number 4? Okay, if the board considers it potentially feasible to accept a portion of the applicant's request for alternative compliance for phase one, but require the standards to be met in full for future phases, staff recommends the board require the applicant to present a proposal that provides a reasonable surety that the pavement and sidewalk be constructed, such as a bond lasting the duration of the master plan.
So we think that's probably going a little bit further than what is necessary. Right now, we've talked about a number of different conditions that indicate that if you do anything more than phase one, that you need to do X, Y, and Z to improve the roadway. I think it's very important to make sure those particular narratives are clear in regards to what the expectations and requirements are. My concern for the family or any applicant is that when you ask for essentially a bond or some financial commitment to be committed essentially for a really long time if phase two never were to go forward is a financial burden. In this particular case, you're essentially talking about the costs of paving the roadway and putting in the sidewalk, and that's going to run anywhere between $75,000 and $100,000 to do that. And in order to basically meet the standard in the last sentence, you essentially have to put that money aside in the bank that then is controlled by both the applicant and the city, so that it can only be managed with coexistence between the two. And that's just a lot of money to put aside for, ultimately, in the family's opinion, really, there's no plans to go forward with phase two and phase three. So my concern is that would be a real burden to put on somebody when the intent and the requirements can simply be met with conditions of approval.
Isn't the roadway not being turned over to the city unless there's connection to another road, right? Didn't we just talk about that in the master plan, that it wouldn't even be turned over? It's going to remain a private. Okay. All right.
Is there any other mechanism to make it a condition, a deed restriction, something about further development not taking place unless the road upgrades and sidewalk upgrades are included in that development proposal?
Yeah, it's been done with just conditions before. It does become, we said this for a reason, right? We didn't say this because we thought conditions were adequate. It has been a problem in that, there's a lot of, there's this great lot for development, and gosh, it's really in the city's interest to get this lot developed, but it would require the developer of that lot to spend all this money to upgrade a private drive that, 9 homes, I'm thinking Bartlett Bay Road, are using right now, for just one additional home or whatever. So it has been a problem. I was hoping that the brilliant minds of this applicant team would come up with something in between those ideas. But I don't have any other ideas other than bond being one extreme and a condition being the other extreme.
So I think, there are additional armoring that can be added. I think the important thing many times when you see the resistance is, and the public works director had identified it, is like, hey, you're going to ask somebody, maybe a third party, 20 years, 50 years, 5 years from now, to proceed with phase two, and it's going to impact everybody in phase one, because you got to pave the roadway, you got to put in sidewalks, and it's important for all of those people, in that particular phase to be advised or warned that this could happen. So ultimately the question is going to be, is it the type of thing that we start to go beyond the city's approval process and start to embed those thoughts in the deeds? Is it one line, is it 2 lines in the deed, which is your point, John, as far as how can we put everybody on notice that this is the conditions of this particular piece of property, and then the fact that it abuts common infrastructure that ultimately is designed to be layered improvements, and that that basically means that there's an exposure to anybody who lives out there today. And certainly in the private environment, when you buy a house and you know, we all love to do this, but there are other people that just go, don't understand. And then when it actually happens, they go, what's going on? So what we want to do is at least make sure that there's an educated group of people associated with these particular areas that would need improvement in the future, so that they understand and make sure that it's clearly written in the deed, lacking in addition to obviously a city approval if we are fortunate enough to get there, and try to create the tools that just educate people in regards to this special situation.
I guess my further concern is one, and we'd have to pull up the drawing again, but I think the roadway is shown as part of the new parcels that are going to be broken out for those 3 houses. So my concerns would be 5, 10, 20 years from now, who remembers this needs to be done? And how do we reasonably make sure that people are aware of it? How do we make clear who's responsible for paying for it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it might not always be family on that site. At some point, these lots may get sold. So phase 1 could potentially end up getting sold to other folks. And then if somebody else wants to build it out, do the people that now own those lots, or are they responsible for upgrading the road?
Yep.
Or is it the person that owns the residual property who's going to develop it and make the money from it that is responsible for upgrading it?
Okay.
Can I
So
interject
kind
a
of
little
connecting those dots would be my concern, is just
Yeah.
so it doesn't get forgotten.
I think that would be valid, but for the draft regulations. And I know regulations can change, but right now the master plan will be valid for 10 years. 6 years with an option to extend to 10. Once the master plan expires under the draft regulations, additional housing is no longer permitted in this zoning district. So the rights are in a very moment in time kind of application. So if they weren't to develop phase 2 and phase 3 within the duration of the master plan, which would be 10 years maximum, there is no future development. There could potentially be industrial development, I suppose. At which time, I think it's a little easier to ask a commercial developer to improve a roadway than to ask a single family home. I don't know if that helps at all.
So are you saying we should not worry about this too much?
They'll have to.
Charlie?
Basically, so they've got 10 years, right? If they really want to build the other phases, which we're going to ignore that you don't, right? I mean, you personally don't, because there's other people who could purchase this land. And if they don't end up doing that, then the roadway won't be constructed unless it's part of a different project, which is not going to be residential under the new LDRs. We don't know what the LDRs in 2034 will be, right? But
Okay, let's move on. Oops. I seem to have lost my place here. Could you read the next one, please? I bounced out somewhere.
No problem. So, comment number 5. Staff therefore at minimum recommends the board consider these criteria when deliberating on the applicant's request for alternative compliance. And the above criteria are regarding street design.
Can you go to a specific page or no?
I'm almost there. Yeah.
Should we walk through the individual criteria, or are there specific ones we think we need more information on?
I mean, I think a quick skim to see if you feel the need for more information, but I think that Dave's talked about
a good amount of it.
Yeah.
So if I may jump in, the LDRs provide a couple of different ways that allow the board to recognize special situations and to provide modifications to the rules through, in this particular case, the applicant went through with what we call alternate compliance because it's intended to demonstrate that it still works. And my concern with this particular component of the LDR is as far as seeking all exemptions from the standards is that item A, we can just stop right there. It basically says the stated reasons why a cited standard or specification cannot be achieved. Well, we could build, this is an exaggeration, the Taj Mahal out here. You can do it, but is it practical? Does it make sense? You know, I can't comply with compliance with the requirements of item A because technically you could put in, a fully paved road and curbs and enclosed drainage system, and I can't say you can't. I would be able to say it's not practical, based on the application. So we were concerned about trying to utilize this tool as a way of demonstrating that this alternate way of approaching things made sense. We felt that the alternative compliance represented a way of demonstrating that it works, and that based on the density and the character that it works with what the applicant is proposing. So that's at least our pushback in regards to kind of switching gears on this. Does it mean that there's more work for staff to write conditions of approval? Maybe. I don't know for a fact because this is the first time that we've used this particular tool also. But my concern as far as anybody that wanted to basically beat us over the head and say, Dave, you tell me why you can't do it, which is question number A in this particular lineup. Of course you can do it. It's just isn't practical, and I don't know if that's an appropriate answer when we try to go down through this list.
Okay, it is 9:30 and we still have public comment, and we know we're going to continue this anyways. So in fairness to the last applicant, I think we will stop now and ask for public comment. Thank you, gentlemen, for your patience.
Well, thank you.
If there is no public comment, I always like to say if the applicant has any burning questions they want to ask the board so that they can take care of them before their next hearing.
Okay. Let's do that before we turn to public comment then.
Well, is there, either way.
Is there anyone in the audience, any members of the public who wish to comment? No. Okay. So since there are none online, there's no public comment. Do you have any questions for the board before you go away?
I think looking at the notes that the remaining items were all manageable. So at this point, we're happy to have both applications continued to a date certain, and with that, I can say that 2 weeks from now is not going to be enough. That
Right.
We're going to need more time than that. In
I
order
don't
to,
think we'd have enough room on the agenda. So are we talking October 1st?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that works for you because we would need your revised materials in 2 weeks for the
Right.
October 1st.
My concern is that that because of staff availability, that we may not be able to pull that off. But perhaps the following meeting after that would give us a better opportunity.
Okay, October 15th.
Yes.
Okay. So, I would entertain a motion to continue MP 2403 and SD 2408 to October 15th.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay.
Very
We'll
good.
see. I won't be here that night, but we'll see you. The big wheel. We'll see you on October 15th.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Okay. Okay, our last application for the night, our last project, is continued sketch plan application SD 2414 of Christopher and Janet Ruggiero to subdivide an existing 13.5 acre lot development with 2 barns, a single family home, an accessory shed into 2 lots of 1.9 acres containing the 2 existing barns on lot 1 and 11.6 acres containing the existing single family home and shed on lot 2 at 197 Autumn Hill Road. Who is here for the applicant?
Brian Courier, Willard Civil Associates.
Hi, Brian.
And Christopher Ruggiero.
Hi, Chris. We don't need to swear you in because it's a sketch plan. So let me just find, okay. Before we start to go through the 5 comments from staff, is there anything you want to say?
I would just say that as this is a continued hearing, our takeaways from the previous hearing were that you were mostly interested in prospective development opportunities on the remaining lands of the parcel, and also some of the uses that the barns along Dorset Street may be used for. A letter was submitted by the abutting neighbor to the northern property line who's interested in purchasing the barns, and they talk about converting one to a pottery studio and potentially a multifamily component on the other one. So we hope that we provided adequate information, and happy to go through the staff report.
Okay, good. Thank you. Number 1, this is regarding the higher number of units. As many as 36.9 units may be required depending on buildable area, and certainly more than the 24 the applicant has shown. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to demonstrate that the provided conceptual layout could accommodate the higher number of required units and still meet required access and natural resource protection standards.
Yep. So the subdivision is the same that you saw before. The barns are being subdivided off in the northwest corner. The remaining lands includes roughly 5 acres of buildable area. Marla, I'd sent you a revised plan later this afternoon. I know it was after 12, but hoping I can speak to it.
I didn't see that, and do you want to talk about it? I can check my email now, but I generally don't check my email during DRB meetings.
Okay. So this is a potential layout under the prior regs when we submitted our initial sketch plan application. The minimum density for the remaining lands or the buildable area was 4 units an acre. Under the new regulations, half of the area has to be built to 8 units an acre. The other half has to be built to 4 units an acre, or an average of 6 units an acre, which is where staff is deriving the 36.9 unit number. They also note later on in the staff report, I believe, that we included the right-of-way as buildable area, which we should remove. It's roughly about an acre in area. So the remaining land is about 5.15 acres, drops the required density to about 32 units, and essentially the plan that I had emailed removes the right-of-way from the buildable area, but then shrinks the unit sizes and puts them on actual lots. It appears that the new LDRs are more focused on minimum lot size, more so than your traditional, or what has been traditional, PUD footprint lot sort of development that's been common in the SUQ for a number of years. So basically the fourplexes got smaller. We're showing lots rather than, there we go. We're showing lots rather than footprint lot or more condo style that has been done in the SEQ for a number of years, but doesn't seem to be the goal of the new LDRs that are on draft notice. So this is our attempt at showing a possible layout. The folks here from Windswept, it should be very clear that this is a requirement from the city that they want to see future planning of what this land could bear to the minimum standards that are in place now. It is the Ruggiero's, or it is their intention to not apply for this development at this point in time. It's simply a planning exercise that is a requirement that we're trying to meet. So,
Okay, questions? The next couple of questions are regarding wetlands standards. Number 2, the provided plan appears to be based on aerial imagery. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to update the subdivision line to continue to match the required minimum setback once a ground survey of the land is undertaken.
and we have no problem doing that. It's a good idea.
Thanks. Okay, number 3, staff considers the board may permit creation of a lot that complies with the provisions of 12.06E that permits maintenance and redevelopment of the existing structures by allowing subdivision of a lawn area equal to the required minimum setback, and recommends the board discuss whether they will accept this recommendation. What do we think, board? Let's see. When I was looking at this, let's see. So I can trace my thoughts. FB, redevelopment of pre-existing gardens, landscaped areas, lawns, public infrastructure, structures, and impervious surfaces within a Class 2 wetland buffer in any zoning district. So these are, an applicant may request a modification in writing from the rules of this section for any development in the following areas. So in my mind, they have grouped gardens, landscaped areas, and lawns, public infrastructure, etc. So it strikes me that I think that it complies with the provisions of 12.06E. But I would certainly welcome any other opinions.
If I may, the redevelopment opportunity of those barns essentially is the same whether or not that subdivision boundary is in place or not. Is kind of how I view it. Either way, we're going through the wetland protection standards in order to do it. The staff lists out all the criteria that would have to be met in order to do so. There's a whole number of requirements in order to do that, but the subdivision allows a neighboring property owner to undertake that development procedure, but in no way does it change the, the path they have to take, or, basically if they were to be redeveloped and they weren't allowed to be subdivided in any configuration that was practical because there's a big Class 2 wetland complex on this parcel, essentially the only opportunity would be from the owners of the parcel at the larger piece, which I don't know if that's necessarily the intention. So
thoughts? Okay. Number 4. Wait, did we just do 2 or 3? We did 3, thanks. Okay, number 4, assuming the board accepts the above recommendations, staff recommends the board ask the applicant to explain why they have provided more than the required setback in the south of the proposed lot. If there is no reason supported by the regulations, staff recommends the board direct the applicant to reduce the lot size to provide only the required setback from the existing structure?
Maybe it's worth bringing it up, Marty, so we can see. We're very close on the southern boundary, but you can see the dashed line represents the setback. On the rear lot line, we brought the setback right up to the structure. It's 15 feet. It's a little bit further. Side yard setback in this district, I believe under the new regs, is 5 feet. That's 10 feet, which is the prior regulation that we had submitted under. You know, I think 5 feet is awfully close when you don't land or you're not, you know, building production style housing where you can, you know, impact the neighboring lot, you know, if you're doing siding or roofing or whatever you may do. I think for ease of any potential construction there, for temporary impacts, I would say, I think having a little breathing room is a good idea. The other piece of it is there's also coverage requirements. You can see in the front of those barns there is graveled area. We didn't shoot that area. I'm sure there's grass over parts of the gravel, so I would say to have a little buffer from a coverage standpoint would be a good idea also.
Do you have a question?
I suppose, is that a reason supported by the regulations? I suppose I'm missing which component we might be looking at to confirm that.
Can you help?
Yeah, so the standard,
The modification standard?
yeah,
is
in
that-
F above, the first one
To
is
accommodate
that
the
it shall be the minimum required to accommodate the proposed development.
Yeah, so as any minimization standard, it's a judgment call. Obviously, you know, the project can move forward with that southern boundary getting a little bit closer. We'd like to have a little breathing room, but you know, that's up to you folks. So.
What are your thoughts?
What's the minimum setback and where is that? It was hard to tell from the drawing. How much of a difference are we talking? 'Cause
Yeah.
The dotted line with the circles.
Yeah. So
is the setback?
No. So the circles is a fence line. As part of the wetland protection standards, what we're electing to do for wetland protection is erect a fence along the property boundary as a demarcation for, you know, future use that you can't go beyond there. That fence also extends south of this property south of this proposed subdivision line. You can see it continuing along the blue dash line. That's the 100-foot wetland buffer. So we're proposing fence line going above and beyond along a class 2 wetland buffer on the west side, but even going further, we're proposing that same fence line on the eastern side to demarcate that 100-foot buffer as part of the minimization, you know, overarching goal of wetland protection as part of this. So I should have described that earlier. That's a fence line.
Okay.
The setback line is that where Marty's got his cursor right there. It's that lighter dashed line.
So
and
zero rear setback?
No. So the subdivision line's the red line. So it's a 15-foot rear yard setback, which that dashed line, you can see it going into the back of the building on the south and northern sides. So basically that rear lot line is being set by that 15-foot rear yard setback, which, you know, gives a good amount of space. From the back
So that rear lot line right now is at minimum setback?
The rear one is.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's really just the side.
It's just the side.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. So what we're showing there is 10 feet, which was the requirement, you know, a few weeks ago. Now it's 5 feet. So it could get closer, or the setback line should be drawn 5 feet closer to the southern red line. And what staff is contemplating is, should the board require us to move that line a little further to the north so it's more indicative of the rear lot line. I think a 15-foot setback gives that breathing room we're looking for, so we have no problem there. But on the southern boundary, we'd like to have a little more breathing room, maybe we could split the difference and, go 10 feet instead of 5. But that's the gist of the issue.
So as you alluded to, one of the things we're looking at is the modification shall be the minimum required to accommodate the proposed development. It seems like your reasoning right now is to have some breathing room, and is that like?
Yeah, I think constructability, for any future piece there, we would impact around the structure to the minimum extent possible, scaffolding or cherry picker, those sorts of things. I think 10 feet's reasonable for something like that. It's one thing if you're doing a traditional subdivision and you own the land as you're going, it's a lot easier to put houses 10 feet apart. But in this instance, I think the constructability piece, and I also think coverage is a consideration. Obviously, if we move that lot line further north, our coverage goes up. So whether you folks feel that's a justifiable reason or not, but we'd like to keep it at least 10 feet away.
So what are we thinking, board? You're good. Okay. All right. Quinn?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 5, I don't know if we need to discuss this, but alternatively, if the board determines the subdivision of land which contains protected natural resources is prohibited under 12.06e, staff recommends the board direct the applicant to submit, but I don't think we have to go there, do we? Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Now, this is a sketch plan. So the question is, what's next? The next step will be we need to do public comment, but the next step in the review process will be for you to submit a preliminary plat.
Marla, can we ask for consideration to combine prelim and final at this point, or no?
Yes, maybe this part of the rules of the draft regulations is a little confusing to me. Because the state, I think it was Act 181, changed it so some subdivisions are subject to administrative review.
Okay.
And so I don't really yet understand how that works. I think you should make the requests that you want to make and then get the board's feedback, and then we will determine what is allowable under state law after.
Fair. We'd like to entertain combining preliminary final if you folks would allow. So just to be clear, it's just the subdivision of that northern corner.
Yeah.
Nothing else shown on the plan other than the fence would be part of that final application.
Ward?
I don't have a problem with that if it's determined
Okay.
to be allowable.
I don't,
Okay.
It doesn't,
Thank
I
you.
see a lot of head shaking. Okay. Good.
Okay.
And let's take some public comment if there are there any members of the public here who would like to comment? Yes, please. Come forward. Are there any online? Okay. Hello. Hi. Does it matter which one I'm having? Just make sure they're on, please. And
Okay.
tell us who you are, please.
Betty Goldberg.
Goldberg.
Goldberg, yes.
Thank you.
And Dawn, you didn't provide your normal introduction. So for folks who weren't here before, just to paraphrase Dawn's normal introduction, the board listens to all your comments, and if your comment is the same as someone else's, please feel free, or you're encouraged to say, I support everything Betty says, and this is my unique thing that I'd also like to add.
Yeah, just so we're not listening, it's the hours late. We don't want to listen to the same comment over and over, but you're welcome to say, as Marla said, I agree with Betty. And If you have something unique to add, we want to hear it. Thank you. Go ahead, Betty.
Thanks for allowing me to speak at the meeting. I think it's very important and relevant to the application that the board become aware of some of the history and recorded evidence of intent before offering an opinion. The original subdivision of these properties included 119.7 acres of the Blair Farm, which was conveyed to Dr. and Mrs. Marshall McBean, who received approval for a 5-lot subdivision in 1977. The recorded documents for this development are numerous and very specific, with a grand vision and accommodations for the future. Wording throughout these legal documents contain terms such as shall, must, may not, forever, permanent, binding, never, always, and property versus properties as plural. Someone suggested to me that real estate language is vague, and I beg to differ on that. I was a real estate broker for residential and commercial real estate for several years, and I believe more challenges occur because of conflicts in real estate than in any other field, and determinations rely on contract language and original intent. As an example, during the development process, our neighbors brought us to environmental court over the access issue. Because of the poor advice we received from the city attorney at the time, the decision from that court relied exclusively on historical recorded documents and original intent. Our journey for I didn't identify myself, but we were the original owners of what is now Windswept Lane and that development. And our journey for that was 14 exhausting and expensive years. We survived the sketch, preliminary and final applications, environmental court, mediation, Act 250, and appeal, interim zoning, and sustainable agriculture. At one time, the city wanted us to preserve our land for raising cattle, even though our acreage only supported 1 or 2 cows in an organic manner. The vision of the southeast quadrant's southern perimeter had always been of allowing low density development, transitioning to a higher density as one progressed towards the commercial areas. At the time of our development, the existing zoning was 1.2 units per acre. We were informed the only way we could proceed to approval was to accept the condition that the proposed Windswept Lane would allow future connections from properties to the north, which was Jewett's at the time and is now Rogerio's, and south, which is the Bulldog property, at the time of our development. Suggestion of connection at this time without development is premature and not acceptable. Creation of lot number 1, which is the barns, does not trigger this connection. The board was instructed to incorporate traffic management strategies to prevent unsafe conditions. I would assume this is to be true today as well. The maximum units allowed for the property north of us was 16 units at the time of our development. Never was it foreseen that this would change to 3 times that and nearly quadruple the ingress and egress trips per day we experience on our 500 feet of our road today. That would be the amount of the road where the connection would occur. Out of feelings of duress and trust in the authorities, we proceeded to accept that condition. Chris Ruggiero has stated he only wants to create either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 or 10 new units, which is minimal for lot coverage that's expected at this time. The city requires a conceptual plan showing full build out and infill be submitted, which his engineer has explained. This would limit the size and the placement of the 1 to 10 lots, which he would want to do. He would want to create while being provisional for future infill and development. Circumstances sometimes are unforeseen and change for everyone. And things might change for Chris as well, including personal or financial. So I don't think we can think of this as just a 1 or 2 addition to that lot. I mean, he could decide next year or 25 years from now that he wants or needs to further develop or sell the property. This could trigger a full build out of the conceptual plan, or worse, the regulations may change to allow higher density or multi-level buildings. I appeal to the board to consider all information before making a decision on allowing this project to proceed. I invite you to come to our neighborhood. It is one of the best in the city. Get a feel for it and research the documents and reflect on the language and the intent. Ask yourself, should we, our community, be asked to bear the burden of the unsafe traffic generated from such a development that is nearly 3 times the size in area and 3 times the units are imagined and up to 4 times the traffic? Allowing an extra curb cut to continue to exist makes more sense. It is safer and less disruptive than a connection to windswept. If this connection were to be allowed, it can never be undone. Our destiny lies in the decision of the 5 board members whose responsibilities include being well-informed and fair. Construction of the proposed connector would be devastating to our community. The possibility to continue to use Autumn Hill upgraded exists and would have occurred had this property been developed first. Let's find a better solution.
Thank you. So by that, I assume that people agree with what you said. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Or add to what Betty said? Okay, thank you. Yes, yes, sir.
Can you just clarify the connection is not part of this application? I just want to clarify that in case this is another
Please
comment.
feel free to say that out loud.
Just to clarify, the connection is not part of this application, so comments addressing that connection don't make sense at this application.
Mm-hmm. But the connection is shown on the drawing, is it not? On the sketch.
Sketch plan conceptual drawing? Sure, that's not the final plat that's going to be presented under this application.
Right, so this proposal is for a subdivision of land, and they're required to demonstrate that they are accommodating the development potential, but not required to make a proposal to do that development. And they're saying that they're not making a proposal to do that development. They're proposing to subdivide 2 lots at this time.
Hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. My name is Elliot Nelson. I'm a resident on Windswept Lane. Do I need to identify myself in any other way?
No.
Okay.
Tell us what's on your mind.
So I do simply support what Betty Goldberg just spoke about. I wanted to make one thing clear, which is that the sketch plan road is it doesn't appear clear on the sketch but the elevation is such that road is higher than the windswept lane properties, including mine, which is the first duplex adjacent essentially to Autumn Hill Road. So that the impact includes all potential lighting and noise that would come from above and impact the units of housing on in Windswept Lane right now. I just wanted to make that clear for people if they're considering the impact on the neighbors.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Nelson. Any other comments? Yes, sir, come on up. He's a doctor. I don't know. Oh, he's a yeah. I mean, he's probably retired now, but yeah.
I am
Hello.
Peter Allison from Windswept Lane. I guess it's more of a question. It's just if you're asking them to show the full proposal, the full build out, wouldn't that include what the access is going to be should this occur? You know, how is, if this were to move ahead with building out more units, what would the access be to this proposed new buildings, at least at this point?
I guess the thing it's a theoretical build out. So there are no units proposed at this point.
Okay.
So the idea is just showing that in a world in which development does happen,
okay,
there is a way to get a road to that development. That way we're just not like chopping the parcel in a way that doesn't make sense for future development. But there is no development proposed at this time, and there's no road connection proposed at this time.
Right. If the road connection for this application would show connection to the new subdivided lot, right? That's all that would be required. If there was other development that's occurring, it would be in a different application.
Okay. So for the current proposal where there's lesser units desired, would it still be using Autumn Hill at this point?
So this application isn't for additional units. It's
Okay.
for
Just
subdividing
dividing
this
the
lot.
land. Okay, I see what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay. So given that this is a sketch plan, we don't need to vote to, we will conclude it. We're not closing it. And we will see you back here at the next stage of which for you is a combined preliminary and final plat.
If we can.
Pardon?
Potentially.
Potentially, yes,
Yeah.
as you requested.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. We have some minutes to approve.
Do you even remember what happened on June 18th? So the June 18th minutes were in this packet.
But not the August 6th.
They should have been both.
I think it was just.
The June?
Did I screw it up?
I don't remember.
And they're in there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from both the June 18th and the August 6th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second on the minutes. We're on minutes right now.
Wait till the discussion, please. Did we have a second?
Second on the
Thank you. Okay. Discussion. It's unusual to.
You want to come to the mic? You have to come to the mic if you're going to participate.
Well, if you have a correction, we want to hear it. We're friendly.
Yeah, if we've gotten names wrong, please do correct us.
I believe you misspelled the Chatterjees in the minutes that in a note about them making a comment. Their name was misspelled.
How do you spell it?
Chatterjee.
Thanks.
There's also an inaccurate statement made about a feud. There was no feud. It was
So the minutes are a reflection of what was said, not what is fact.
correct. Okay. So I guess the spelling would be the
So if that was what was said, even if you disagree that it was factual, that needs to be reflected in the minutes.
okay.
But thank you for correcting the spelling.
There's a hand.
Are there other, did we have another hand up? No.
Online, someone?
Online.
Somdeb?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shomdep Chatterjee. I'm a resident at Windswept Lane. And so just a quick question to what, based on like, I think Betty presented our views pretty well, and then Peter asked a similar question, but I understand that this is a sketch plan and you are just showing that there's a way to access the property.
Hi, we're gonna cut you off. We actually concluded that part of the hearing, and we're actually in minutes right now. If you've got questions, I suggest you email the city about them.
Sorry, I didn't understand that because I think at the end of that, nobody asked if there was someone online. It was only for the public one, so I didn't get a chance to say anything.
We checked online.
I believe we
It's up
did
to you
check
guys.
online, but if you have comments to make, please provide your written comments to Marla Keen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the minutes. We had the discussion. All in favor of approving the minutes of June 18th and August 6th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved as amended. And that is the end of the meeting. Well, is there any other business?
Next meeting, please be excited. You're going to have a discussion of the draft amendments. And so city council hearing on the draft amendments will be the night prior to your meeting.
Right.
So the discussion is going to be pretty, like, these are the subject areas, these are the major changes. Some of the details will still to be worked out. If there's specific subject areas that you would like to be included in that discussion, you can read the summary of the proposed changes on our website. Please feel free to email me with questions of things that you want us to focus on, if anything. Otherwise, I think Kelsey has a pretty practiced presentation that she can give you.
Great, thank you. Any other new business?
Nope.
Thanks for hanging in there. It's been a long night.